Chapter 672. The battlefield had already quietened down and all that was left was a charred ground. Soaring serpents rose into the air and lava raged, burning everything within 100 miles. The aura of a divine being was not only suppressing the rainbow wolf spiders, but other demon beasts as well. The rainbow wolf spiders were all burned to death. The remaining demon beasts broke free from the control of the rainbow wolf spiders and fled as well. The beast stampede retreated, leaving behind a ground of corpses and some of the wreckage that was still emitting smoke. Monkey, Linghu, and the golden lion were covered in injuries and panted heavily. Monkey, Linghu, thank you, Little Crane spoke in human tongue and extended her long and slender beak, rubbing Monkey and Linghu's cheeks gently. It's nothing, Monkey grinned and waved it off, pointing to Linghu at the side. That perverted tiger was the first to notice the problem. We only realized that something was amiss when he kept muttering along the way. Linghu was so happy that he was about to float when he sensed Little Crane's affectionate actions. However, when he heard Monkey mention the word perverted tiger, Linghu had an awkward expression and coughed gently to divert Little Crane's attention. Little Crane was a little confused. Monkey snickered. The golden lion and little fox knew the reason and smiled knowingly as well. Linghu patted his chest and said, although I've never seen you in human form before, I recognized you right away when I saw those beautiful eyes of yours. Humph, humph. You were staring at her long legs. Since when did you look at her eyes? Monkey pouted and mumbled softly. Linghu glared at Monkey and said hurriedly, Little Crane, don't listen to his nonsense. Linghu looked at Little Crane affectionately and was brewing his emotions, as though he wanted to say something. After a long time, Little Crane was getting goosebumps from being stared at. Suddenly, Linghu shouted, "Ah!" The golden lion and little fox were caught off guard and jumped in fright. They looked at Linghu in confusion, wondering what was wrong with him. Monkey rolled his eyes. Linghu continued, "Ah! Your eyes are so beautiful, like the stars, like the moon, like the sun, like the, Golden Lion was speechless. The little fox was petrified. The monkey was dumbfounded, feeling as if it had been struck by lightning. Was Linghu composing a poem? Not to mention how lousy the poem was, it actually got stuck halfway through. Monkey stretched out his hand, wanting to send Linghu flying. However, just now that he had just fought a huge battle, he really couldn't muster up any strength. The monkey let out a long sigh and could only cover his face and turn around. He really didn't want to look at Linghu. He felt that he couldn't afford to lose face. Linghu looked embarrassed and scratched his head. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind and he shouted, "It looks like the big gem in the deep sea." The spirit tiger shook its head proudly and laughed foolishly, intoxicated by its own success. In his opinion, the last sentence was the finishing touch. It was a brilliant literary talent. Little Crane felt goosebumps all over her body and shuddered subconsciously. "How is it, Little Crane?" Linghu closed in and licked his tiger face. Little Crane glanced at Linghu and said coldly, "Are you in heat?" Little Fox could not help but burst into laughter. Monkey and the golden lion were laughing happily at the sight as well. Linghu had not expected Little Crane's words to be so sharp and direct. He could not handle it at all and was so embarrassed that his tiger face flushed red, wishing that there was a hole in the ground to hide in. Right then, a person tore through the air from afar. Behind him was a rope, and at the end of the rope was a spider with 8 broken legs. It was the original body of the colorful robed man. Little Crane's eyes were filled with endless rage and her body was trembling. "Are you all right?" Descending before everyone, Su Zimo took out a bunch of elixirs from his storage bag. There were all sorts of things for consumption and external application. Right now, he did not lack any of those things. Monkey and Linghu applied the elixirs silently while paying attention to Little Crane. Little Crane rushed to the colorful robed man and stomped heavily on his body, questioning, "You said that you saw a man who looked like me at the Thousand Spiders sand dune. Is that true?" The colorful robed man was already severely injured to begin with. Now that little Crane stomped on him, his organs were shaken and he coughed out a mouthful of blood, panting. "Of course it's true." Little Crane asked hurriedly with a nervous expression, "Where is he? Is that Bai Fong your father?" Knowing that he had no chance of survival, the colorful-robed man laughed gloatingly. "What a pity. You'll never be able to see him again. He's long dead." "Ha ha ha." Little Crane shuddered and her face turned ghastly pale instantly. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The Bai Fong was a ferocious bird of the primordial era. It was extremely strong and controlled fire. It was one of the most terrifying species of ferocious birds. However, the phoenix race was way too terrifying among ferocious birds. They were the kings of all birds and could control fire as well. That was the reason why the Bai Fong was not too famous. However, in reality, the true strength of the Bai Fong was not inferior to the soaring serpent, a god of fire. Su Zimo had long noticed that little Crane's appearance was different from ordinary cranes. Ordinary cranes merely had vermilion on their heads and snow-white bodies. However, little Crane's body was covered in emerald green feathers and was extremely beautiful. If she had the bloodline of the Bai Fong, then everything would make sense. A Bai Fong's body was emerald green in color. Su Zimo lamented internally, "No wonder I've never seen little Crane's father nor heard the old immortal Crane mention him. So, he met with an accident long ago. I don't believe it." Little Crane shook her head repeatedly and glared at the colorful-robed man, asking with a trembling voice, "Why, you're lying, right?" "Lying?" The colorful-robed man laughed bitterly. "Your father had a death wish by barging into the Thousand Spiders sand dune with his capabilities. My rainbow wolf spider race has long sucked his blood dry. It's just nice that we can eat his flesh and drink his blood to cultivate, ha ha ha." Little Crane's blood chi was already weak to begin with. Now that she received such a blow, she felt her vision darken and her head spin. "Sister Little Crane." Little Fox hurried forward and supported Little Crane. Bang! Suddenly, a slap landed on the colorful-robed man's head, shattering it into pieces and causing brain juice to splatter all over the ground. Linghu flung his palm and grumbled, "How noisy! Why are you still freaking laughing when you're so ugly? I've tolerated you for so long." Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. He could tell that Linghu did that because he did not want Little Crane to suffer any more blows. In reality, even if Linghu did not make a move, he would have made a move. It was clear that the colorful-robed man had no intention of living and was trying his best to agitate Little Crane with his words. His intentions were murderous. Su Zimo patted Little Crane on the shoulder gently and consoled, "Don't let your thoughts run wild. This spider knows that he's going to die and is clearly spouting nonsense. Things might not be as you think." Little Crane nodded, but the sorrow in her eyes could not be concealed. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 673. Sensing the sorrow in Little Crane's heart, Linghu scratched his ears and cheeks. He wanted to share her burden but did not know what to say. Nobody knew how to console her over something as such. The atmosphere turned heavy. Linghu looked at Su Zimo, hoping that the latter would say something. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo decided to divert Little Crane's attention first and asked, "Little Crane, why did you enter the intermediate ancient battlefield?" Although the old immortal Crane had already broken through 20 years ago and became a high-level fiend demon that was equivalent to the Dharma characteristic realm of the human race, it was most likely impossible for her to open up a spatial node to the intermediate ancient battlefield on her own. As though she recalled something, Little Crane's expression changed and she reverted to her human form. Hurriedly, she grabbed Su Zimo's arm and said anxiously, "Save Nian Qi. You've got to think of a way to save Nian Qi." Su Zimo's heart sank as he took a deep breath. "What's going on? Don't panic, tell me slowly." Nian Qi was a little girl he picked up in the capital of Great Zhou, and there were many secrets in her body. For example, Nian Qi was immensely strong even before she started cultivating. For example, he could not sense the passage of time on Nian Qi's body. Or rather, the passage of time was extremely slow. This meant that Nian Qi's lifespan was extremely long. At the very least, it was much longer than people of the same cultivation realm. Even so, Su Zimo did not suspect Nian Qi at all. Everyone had their secrets. Furthermore, she was only a child with a pure heart. Be it towards him or Misty Peak, she had no ill intentions. During the battle at Misty Peak, Nian Qi gave it her all and almost died. It was clear that this child already viewed Misty Peak as her home. Little Crane said, "This time round, the patriarch of the great Zhou dynasty came forward and sought you out, mother, wanting to work together to open up a spatial node. This ancestor is a Dharma Dao Jun. Unfortunately, his qi and blood have deteriorated and his lifespan is nearing its end. Therefore, he decided to use a secret method to burn the last of his lifespan, erupting with power and joining forces with Mother to open a spatial node. However, this teleportation channel is extremely narrow and can only teleport 2 people. This ancestor of the great Zhou dynasty has given both places to Misty Peak." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly. This move was equivalent to giving Misty Peak a huge gift with his life. The actions of the Patriarch of Great Zhou were definitely up to something. Little Crane continued, "The Patriarch of Great Zhou knew that his lifespan was nearing its end and was worried that the Great Zhou dynasty would face a calamity after his death. As such, he wanted to use this gift in exchange for the protection of Mother and Misty Peak." After the battle at Misty Peak, the other 4 sects had suffered great losses. Even void reversions had perished. Although Misty Peak suffered heavy casualties as well, the disciples who survived would definitely have a bright future. Furthermore, with this battle, the old immortal Crane extended her lifespan and entered the Dharma characteristic realm, breaking free from the shackles of heaven and earth. Her lifespan increased immensely and she was no longer threatened by her lifespan. Misty Peak became the leader of the 5 major sects with a single leap. Their strength surpassed the other 4 major sects and there were more and more cultivators who wanted to join Misty Peak. In the past 20 years, Misty Peak had already become the #1 sect in the territory of Great Zhou. It was not hard to understand why the Patriarch of Great Zhou would make such a decision. Little Crane looked at Su Zimo and continued, "Mother told me that the reason why the throne of Great Zhou was given to Ji Yaoxue was partly because of your potential. At the same time, it was also because of your relationship with Ji Yaoxue and the fact that you have Misty Peak backing you." Su Zimo nodded. He had long guessed that as well. According to etiquette, the inheritance of the throne was passed down to the first wife and the first wife. No matter what, it would not have landed on Ji Yaoxue. Furthermore, she was a woman. Eventually, the fact that the throne of Great Zhou was passed down to Ji Yaoxue and that the throne was not abolished despite the internal and external troubles of Great Zhou for the past 20 years was definitely not the decision of the Emperor of Great Zhou alone. Now, it seemed like the Patriarch of Great Zhou was backing this as well. All of this made sense. It had to be said that the Patriarch of Great Zhou was truly scheming. Furthermore, he had made the right bet. The fact that the old immortal Crane sent Little Crane in meant that she had already agreed to this matter. Although he was dead, he still paved the way for Great Zhou before his death by finding a Dharma characteristic expert to protect them. As for where Great Zhou would end up in the future, that was not something he could control. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Senior Crane sent you and Nian Qi in for 2 spots?" "Yes," Little Crane nodded. "There are more cultivators joining Misty Peak and the strength of the sect has increased. However, there are many problems as well. Be it elixirs, weapons, cultivation techniques or spirit arts, we can no longer supply them. Mother and the Patriarch place great importance on the opening of the ancient battlefield this time round and want to make use of it to strengthen the foundation of the sect. Although Nian Qi joined the sect late, she's already the #1 of the Jin Dan realm in the sect right now. In fact, the Patriarch even said that she might be able to fight with you. Mother also said that Nian Qi's Jin Dan phenomenon might be able to fight for the top 10 of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking." Su Zimo's eyes lit up. The fact that there was a chance of fighting for the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking was enough to shock him. The Patriarch and Ling Yun were already at the Void Reversion realm. Coupled with the old immortal Crane, the fact that they were able to give such an evaluation was proof of Nian Qi's strength. Of course, Su Zimo had been hiding at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years, and there was no way the old immortal Crane and the Patriarch and Ling Yun would know of his strength. Nobody had witnessed it for themselves either. Little Crane seemed to have recalled something as a look of fear flashed through her eyes. Not long after we entered the ancient battlefield, we met 7 people, 6 men and a woman. They were way too strong. The strength of those 7 people was way too strong. Little Crane emphasized repeatedly, it was clear how shocked she was at that time. These people look at everything with a condescending indifference. But the moment they see Nianqi, there's something wrong with their eyes. Nianqi's expression turned terrible when she saw those people as well. At that time, we were holding hands and her palms were cold and sweaty. At that point, Su Zimo and the others could not help but feel nervous. Little Crane continued, thereafter, the 7 of them looked at Nianqi with strange expressions and walked over. Nianqi said to me, "Don't ask anything, hurry and run," before going up to them. Pausing for a moment, Little Crane gulped and continued, Nianqi rushed up and released his Jin Dan phenomenon. However, it was shattered by a single punch from the leader of the other party. "Ah!" Little Fox exclaimed. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and asked instead, "Destroyed Nianqi's Jin Dan phenomenon with a single punch?" "Yes." Little Crane nodded with certainty. Su Zimo had a grim expression. According to the old immortal Crane, Nianqi's Jin Dan phenomenon had a chance of making it into the top 10 of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. In other words, Nianqi's Jin Dan phenomenon was definitely not inferior to his soaring serpent and divine turtle phenomenons. However, that terrifying Jin Dan phenomenon was destroyed with a single punch. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. Even he might not be able to produce such a powerful burst of power. Suddenly, Su Zimo realized that the ancient battlefield this time round was even more frightening than he had imagined. Chapter 674. Nianqi did not last more than 3 moves against that person. At that time, I was truly scared out of my wits, and the only thing left in my head was Nianqi's voice telling me to run. Little Crane's eyes were filled with guilt and self-blame as she lowered her head. I know that I'm a coward for not choosing to fight alongside Nianqi. However, I didn't even have the courage to fight against those people. I fled with all my might with only a single thought in mind, to find you and tell you about this. However, I didn't manage to escape far before I fell into the hands of the rainbow wolf spiders. Linghu consoled hurriedly, "It's not your fault. You can't beat them either. If it was me, I would have fled as well." Su Zimo patted Little Crane on the back of her hand gently. "You did the right thing. If you were truly hot-headed and fought against those people, you would only have lost your life for nothing. Furthermore, it's fortunate that you managed to escape. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about you guys." Little Crane's expression softened slightly. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked, "Did those people harm Nianqi?" "No," Little Crane shook her head. "The leader merely captured Nianqi alive and said that he would seek punishment from the elders. I didn't catch the rest." At that point, Little Crane sighed. "The reason why I was able to escape wasn't because they couldn't catch up to me. It was because they didn't take me seriously at all. I'll never forget the way they looked at me. It was as though they were looking at an ant. Who would care about an ant that escaped?" After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo suddenly asked, "What did they look like?" Little Crane replied, "The 7 of them were dressed in extremely ancient attire. All of them had golden hair, green eyes and straight noses. They were extremely handsome and easy to recognize." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. In that case, Nianqi's appearance was rather similar to those people. During the battle at Misty Peak, Nianqi had once unleashed his potential and his strength had skyrocketed. His originally withered and yellow hair had also become as straight as a waterfall. His golden hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were blue. His magnificence was unparalleled, and he was like an inviolable deity. Nianqi's background was definitely related to these people. But where did these people come from? Su Zimo couldn't say. However, he had a vague guess in his heart. Judging from those people's attitudes, Nianqi shouldn't be in any danger for the time being. Su Zimo looked at the worried little crane and said gently, "Don't worry, leave this to me." "Yes." Little crane nodded. If there was anyone in the primordial battlefield who could save Nianqi, it would probably be Su Zimo. "Let's go. Let's leave this place first and find a place to rest." Monkey, the Linghu and the Golden Lion were injured. Although they consumed many elixirs, they had to rest for a couple of days before they could recover fully. For the next couple of days, Su Zimo and the others were not in a hurry to travel. Instead, they stayed in a cave for a couple of days. They had already stayed in the primordial battlefield for more than a month. Coupled with the rich spirit chi and the previous battle, Su Zimo's Jin Dan realm loosened and he finally sensed an opportunity to break through. Within his dantian, above the Soraka flower, a dazzling golden core was circulating slowly. The aura within the Jin Dan was extremely complex. There was the aura of the immortal and fiend Dao. Those two auras were initially opposing each other. However, there was an additional aura of the Buddhist monasteries within the Jin Dan, forming a buffer that fused the immortal and fiend Daos together perfectly. Su Zimo assumed a lotus position with his eyes closed and his black hair swayed without any wind. On his left, mist rose and the phantom of a divine turtle appeared. On his right, flames burned and the phantom of a soaring serpent descended. Gradually, as time passed by, the aura within Su Zimo's body turned increasingly terrifying. It lasted until water and fire fused and the turtle and serpent coiled. The entire void trembled. A shuddering aura burst forth from Su Zimo's body like a visible ripple that spread through the cave. Monkey and the others were alarmed and hurriedly hid, watching from the entrance of the cave. Wherever the ripple extended, countless gravel would be reduced to nothingness. It was as though the entire cave was sliced apart by a sharp blade. Rumble. Boom. The entire mountain quaked. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Boom. A deafening sound seemed to have echoed from Su Zimo's body. Two divine lights shone within the cave. Opening his eyes, Su Zimo bolted upright and howled into the skies. His howl was loud and pierced through metal and stone. Right in front of Monkey and the others, Su Zimo spat out a stream of air that pierced through the stone wall above his head like a flying sword. His breath was like a sword. This was the limit of perfected being Jin Dan. Success. At this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo was already at the perfected Jin Dan realm. With another step, he would be at the nascent soul realm and cultivate the legendary essence spirit to control dermic powers. That cultivation speed was not considered top-notch. However, Su Zimo cultivated both immortality and demonic. It was already rather rare for him to be able to reach this stage despite that. Su Zimo's Jin Dan gradually faded and his aura was retracted. Peace returned to the cave. Over the past few days, Monkey and the others had made breakthroughs in their cultivation realms as well and were almost at the perfected inner core realm. They had been by Su Zimo's side and devoured the flesh and blood with the strongest life essence. Coupled with the elixirs, it was only logical that they would be able to cultivate to this point. For the past few days, Little Crane was still in low spirits. It was not only because she was worried about Nianqi, the greater reason was because she heard about the death of her kin. Su Zimo could empathize with that feeling. Linghu accompanied Little Crane the entire day, racking his brains to please her but to no avail. This day, as though he had thought of something, Linghu was extremely excited and shouted in front of everyone, "Hey, hey, hey! I've got a suggestion." Pausing for a moment, Linghu took a deep breath and said seriously, "Let's become sworn siblings." Sworn siblings? Monkey's eyes lit up. All of them had an extremely deep relationship with one another. Although the Golden Lion and Little Fox joined later, they had already integrated into the group after spending the past few days together. Furthermore, be it Little Fox or Golden Lion, both of them had already received everyone's acknowledgement after the battle in the ancient city. Naturally, the Golden Lion was elated. Little Fox would not decline as well. After becoming sworn siblings, it would be even more logical for her to follow Su Zimo. Little Crane was invigorated when she heard that suggestion. Looking at Monkey, Linghu, and the others, her eyes regained some luster. Su Zimo nodded to himself. Although Linghu seemed carefree, this suggestion was not bad. The reason why Little Crane was sad was because she had lost her kin. However, after becoming sworn siblings, it would mean that she would have a few more kin. Monkey pondered for a moment and looked at Su Zimo, saying hesitantly, "Don't join us. You're a human after all. If you become sworn siblings with us, you'll definitely face a lot of trouble in the future." Ha ha ha. Su Zimo burst into laughter. Monkey, am I, Su Zimo, someone who's afraid of everything? While it's true that I'm a human, I insist on becoming sworn siblings with you guys. I'll accept all the trouble that comes my way. Alright, let's do it together then. Monkey was filled with pride as well. Alright. Linghu cheered. At that moment, nobody realized that a seemingly simple oath in this corner of the ancient battlefield would, to a certain extent, determine the future of Tianhuang mainland. Chapter 675. As Monkey had said, Su Zimo would never be able to explain himself once he became sworn siblings with them. However, Su Zimo did not care. The reason why he cultivated was so that he could repay his debts of gratitude and revenge. There was no way he would be restrained by the so-called righteous and evil, immortal and fiend, etiquette and doctrines. If he wanted to establish his Tao, he had to have the boldness to break through all restraints and rules. Linghu said, "Since we're sworn siblings, there should be one more person even though he's not here." Little Crane asked, "Little Night Spirit, right?" Linghu nodded hurriedly and wagged his tail, praising, "Little Crane, you're really smart." Little Crane blushed slightly and kicked Linghu with her long legs. After I condensed my inner core, my mother gave me a name, Ching Ching. Little Crane had the bloodline of the Baifeng and looked different from other immortal cranes. Her feathers were slightly green, that was a fitting name. The little fox called out obediently, "Sister Ching Ching." Yes, Ching Ching nodded and hugged Little Fox to her side. Although this was the first time they were meeting, they were already as close as sisters after spending the past few days together. "Who is this little night spirit that you guys are talking about?" Little Fox asked curiously. A look of reminiscence flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he lamented, "That's a little beast that I picked up in Songlang mountain range more than 20 years ago. It's about time that he grew up." At the mention of Night Spirit, Monkey, Linghu and Little Crane revealed concerned expressions. After all, they were the ones who witnessed the birth and growth of Night Spirit back at Misty Peak. Night Spirit was picky with his food and would not touch the flesh of ordinary demon beasts. In order to feed Night Spirit, Monkey, the Spirit Tiger and Little Crane fought their way through the desolate forest and were covered in injuries. They brought back many pieces of meat and fed them to Night Spirit one after another. Although that period of time was tough and dangerous, they were extremely happy to see Night Spirit grow up bit by bit. Everything felt worth it. Night Spirit had just been born and was very obedient. He knew who was good to him. Although his claws were extremely sharp, he had never revealed them to Monkey, the Linghu, and Little Crane. "It's been so many years since I've seen that little brat. I wonder how he looks like now and if he can still recognize us." It was rare for Monkey to be sentimental. After the incident at Dongling Valley, Su Zimo and Night Spirit fled far away and hid in the capital of Great Zhou. Monkey and the others had never seen Night Spirit again. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years had passed. Su Zimo gazed into the distance and murmured softly, 20 years ago, Night Spirit accompanied Xiaoning to Elixir Yang sect of the Middle Continent. I wonder if I'll be able to meet them in the intermediate ancient battlefield. Is there a problem with adding Night Spirit? Linghu asked. Monkey and Ching Ching nodded. Little Fox naturally had no objections as well. She was satisfied as long as she could bring Su Zimo along. The golden lion was a little confused and did not know what Night Spirit was either. When he saw that everyone agreed, he shrugged as well, indicating that he did not mind. Linghu rolled his eyes and coughed gently. Since we're sworn siblings, we have to rank based on seniority. We can't mess up the seniority in the future, right? Monkey sneered and could tell what Linghu was thinking right away. He asked coldly, "Why? You want to be the boss?" "No, no, no." Linghu was so scared that he shuddered and waved it off hurriedly with an embarrassed smile. "How can I? Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have the guts." Hee hee. Including Night Spirit, there were a total of 7 of them. There were both humans and demons. If they were to rank based on age alone, it would definitely be messy. What are your thoughts? Hurry and say it. Ching Ching extended her long leg and kicked Linghu once more. Linghu was not annoyed. Instead, he was delighted and said excitedly, "The reason why we're all gathered together is because of Su Zimo. He's the only candidate for the position of Big Brother. Furthermore, he's the strongest. That's without a doubt." Everyone nodded. Monkey had no objections as well. He had a wild nature and would only have no objections if Su Zimo was ranked ahead of him. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not interrupt, merely listening to Linghu's arrangements. Linghu was invigorated and wagged his tail, looking at Monkey with a fawning smile. Only Brother Monkey is qualified for the second position. Firstly, Brother Monkey is the first to know Big Brother and is the most experienced. Secondly, apart from Big Brother, he's probably the strongest among us. When he heard that, Monkey was satisfied and grinned. Naturally, Ching Ching, Little Fox and Golden Lion did not have any objections either. Actually, Linghu wanted to be second as well. However, once he took that position, he would most likely be tortured to death by Monkey. Linghu thought about it and decided against it. Linghu took a deep breath of air and cleared his throat. With a solemn expression, he said in a deep voice, "It's my turn to take the third position. I've known Big Brother for a long time and there's nothing to say about my strength." Linghu patted his chest and declared confidently. That was his true intention. With that seniority, he would be able to bully those behind him in the future. Of course, he could not bully Ching Ching. Little Fox was protected by Su Zimo and could not be touched as well. Forget about Night Spirit. With that, only Golden Retriever was left. Over the past few days, Golden Lion had finally fought for a better name for itself against the strong protests of Yellow Fur to Golden Retriever. At the very least, with the word golden, it did not bring shame to the bloodline of the Golden Lion race. Linghu glared at Golden Lion and smirked maliciously. In this way, Ching Ching was naturally ranked 4th. There was no dispute about the first 4 positions. When it came to the 5th position, Golden Lion could not take it anymore. According to Linghu's arrangement, Night Spirit should be 5th. After all, after Monkey, Linghu and Ching Ching, Night Spirit was acquainted with Su Zimo. However, how could Golden Lion know who Night Spirit was? It was definitely indignant that it was placed in front by a little beast that it had never seen before. However, right after, it was suppressed mercilessly by Monkey, Linghu, and Ching Ching. Its protests were ineffective. Little Fox was 6th. Golden Lion hid in a corner with a livid expression. There were palm prints on its face and a few footprints on its body. With tears brimming in its eyes, it had a resentful expression and no longer spoke. Linghu looked at Golden Lion and laughed. "Golden Retriever, are you happy that you're 7th? The Golden Lion grit its teeth in hatred when it saw Linghu's smug expression. Monkey teased, "Golden Retriever, it's fine. If there are any brothers that join us in the future, they'll be ranked behind you. Brother Golden Retriever, although I'm ranked before you, I won't bully you," Little Fox said with a serious expression. Golden Lion wanted to cry but no tears came out. To be fair, he truly could not afford to offend the people in front of him. Although Little Fox was the weakest, it had Su Zimo's protection after all. The more he thought about it, the more indignant he felt. I wonder who Night Spirit is. It's best if you don't let me meet you. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach you a lesson and make you give up the 5th position obediently. A nameless little beast wants to sit on my head? Humph. Golden Lion rubbed its palms and grumbled internally. Chapter 676. Apart from Su Zimo, the 7 of them were all demons. They were carefree and did not pay attention to the messy rituals. After that suggestion, everyone lit incense and bowed to the heavens as sworn brothers. After this incident, everyone became closer. Qing Qing's mood also improved a lot. Linghu followed behind Qing Qing every day, fawning over her. With Linghu around, there was naturally much laughter along the way. This day, they arrived at a barren plain. Su Zimo's expression changed and he paused in his tracks, listening intently. Among the 7 of them, Su Zimo's 5 senses were the strongest and were a level higher than the other 6. Most of the time, Su Zimo was the first to notice anything. "Bro, what's wrong?" the Golden Lion asked. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "There's quite a commotion in the east. There seems to be quite a number of people. Not only are there cultivators, there are also faint roars of demon beasts." Right then, the ground trembled slightly. Dong! 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 A series of sounds could be vaguely heard from the east, as though someone was beating a heavenly drum. The next moment, a bedazzling light surged into the air and illuminated the world. A treasure had appeared. The reason why the major factions and sects of Tianhuang mainland sent cultivators to this place with all their might was because there were many cave abodes left behind by their predecessors in the ancient battlefield. There were also some legacy lands, many ancient secret realms, and even many great tombs that contained countless rare treasures. For example, some cultivation methods, secret techniques, divine weapons, and secret treasures. Anyone who obtained one of them would be able to soar into the sky and transform into a dragon. Even if they did not need them, they could offer them to their sects in exchange for rich rewards. Some powers and sects could very well rise because of this opportunity. They would go from being small and nameless sects to laying down their foundations and becoming a great power that could dominate a region. In fact, there was even a high chance that they could become one of the 108 upper sects. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and whispered, "Let's go and take a look over there." With that said, Su Zimo sped off in a flash. Monkey and the rest followed closely behind. Not long after, Su Zimo gradually slowed down and looked over. Not far ahead, there was a huge mountain peak that towered into the clouds. There were many cultivators surrounding the mountain. At the top and bottom of the mountain, countless demonic beasts were roaring. An intense conflict broke out between the cultivators and the demons. In midair, spiritual energy surged, bursting out with visible halos and waves of air. Countless ancient trees were snapped, and gravel flew everywhere. This battle lasted for an unknown amount of time. The mountain peak was already dyed red with blood. It was extremely tragic. Su Zimo could clearly see that there was something strange about the mountain. It was split open from the middle, as if it had been torn apart by a pair of invisible hands. In the middle of the mountain, there was no mountain rock. Instead, there was a huge palace built there. It didn't look like it was built by human hands. It could be said to be the work of the gods. The palace was already riddled with holes, and there were many ancient weapons placed inside. There were also many elixirs and miraculous medicines, and some ancient books covered in dust. Su Zimo whispered, "This is the appearance of an ancestor's cave abode. 2 major factions are fighting for the treasures inside. The battlefield is too chaotic. There's no way to see what's inside." Monkey frowned. "If we barge in now, we'll definitely be targeted." Little Fox's eyes darted around and she whispered, "There's no telling how many cultivators and ferocious beasts are lying in ambush nearby, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Let's wait a little longer. If there's no treasure worth fighting for, let's not get involved in this mess." Su Zimo had a calm expression. The palace was hidden in the middle of the mountain peak and did not seem simple. However, Su Zimo was not in a hurry either. It would not be too late to strike if there was truly a treasure that appeared. Boom! A human paragon released his Jin Dan phenomenon and collided heavily against a few ferocious beasts. The power spread and the entire palace shook. Many weapons were affected by the chaotic power and scattered in midair. The human paragon's eyes lit up as he grabbed one of the swords and injected spirit energy into it. The sword shone brightly and shone with 5 spirit patterns. It was a perfect-grade spirit weapon. Slash! The human paragon hollered and waved his sword. A blazing sword beam tore through the air like a rainbow and sliced the bodies of a few ferocious beasts opposite him into 2, causing a blood mist to fill the air. Ha, good sword! The human prodigy was overjoyed. With that sword, his strength would increase tremendously and his chances of fighting for a spot on the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking would increase as well. Many other cultivators were attacking as well, snatching the weapons that were scattered in midair. Su Zimo could clearly see that the lowest grade of the weapons was supreme grade and there were even more than 10 perfect grade spirit weapons. There were so many treasures in a single palace. For most cultivators, an additional supreme grade spirit weapon would increase their strength. An additional perfect grade spirit weapon would increase their strength by a level. However, be it supreme grade or perfect grade spirit weapons, none of them could catch Su Zimo's attention right now. His main objective for this trip was to see if there were any high-grade dermic weapons. It was not only for himself, but for Monkey and the others as well. Although Monkey and the others were demons, they could refine their own dermic weapons after breaking through their inner cores and cultivating their essence spirits. It would be best if they could obtain a suitable dermic weapon before they advanced to nascent soul realm. Boom! There was another deafening sound. One of the walls of the palace collapsed and many weapons that were scattered on it bounced up. It was clear that those weapons were different from spirit weapons. They floated in the void without any fluctuations caused by spirit energy and the patterns on them were even more intricate and intricate. Dermic weapons. There were dermic weapons in this palace. Look, there are 2 dermic patterns on that flying sword. It's a middle-grade dermic weapon. For perfected being Jin Dan and many spirit demons, a middle-grade dermic weapon was enough to make them envious. This meant that they would possess a middle-grade dermic weapon the moment they advanced to nascent soul realm. Ah, 3 dermic patterns. It's a superior grade dermic weapon. Attack! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. A scarlet spear floated in midair. There were actually 3 dermic patterns on it. Boom! A gigantic demon beast soared into the air. It resembled a tiger but had a pair of wings on its back. It had a menacing gaze and exuded a boundless ferocious aura. One of the 4 ancient ferocious beasts, Cheong Chi. The golden lion said slowly with a grim expression. Even among pure-blooded ferocious beasts, there were differences in strength. For example, the legendary 4 ancient ferocious beasts were far stronger than other ferocious beasts. The moment Cheong Chi appeared, it opened its mouth and devoured a cultivator who had released Jin Dan's phenomenon. It chewed the cultivator into pieces within a few bites and swallowed him into its stomach, causing blood to flow from the corner of its mouth. It was way too savage and even Jin Dan's phenomenon could not defend against it. Raging city blaze. A loud roar sounded from the flat ground. A human paragon wearing a blazing robe charged into the battlefield and a gigantic ancient city appeared behind him. Within the ancient city, flames burned furiously and surged into the skies, incinerating all living beings. The ancient city descended and suppressed another pure-blooded ferocious beast into a bloody paste. Instantly, it was incinerated into ashes by the flames without a corpse left. This was a paragon of Blaze Columbus Valley, one of the 10 upper sects of the North region. A superior-grade dermic weapon was born. More paragons and ferocious beasts charged into the battlefield. End of chapter. Chapter 677. Should we head up and fight for it? Linghu was raring to go and his eyes shone with excitement. There's no need for that. Su Zimo had a calm expression and his eyes shone as he said in a deep voice, although superior-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons are decent, they're not worth us taking the risk and getting involved in this mess. In the ancient battlefield, even Dao Lord Dermic weapons and mighty figure Dermic weapons had long fallen to the level of perfected Lord Dermic weapons without the tempering of their essence spirits and the baptism of time, their Dermic powers had dissipated. The only difference was that their Dermic patterns were still present and their grades did not change. Therefore, even if Dermic weapons were to appear here, most of them would be perfected Lord Dermic weapons. Let's go, let's leave this place first. Su Zimo waved his hand and prepared to leave with Monkey and the others. You're thinking of leaving after coming here? A gigantic ferocious bird spread its wings and covered the skies, emitting a torrential demonic chi. With a sharp gaze, it swooped down and extended its sharp claws towards Little Fox. Foxes were all natural seductresses. Unless they had a strong backing, they would definitely be fought over by many demon beasts the moment they appeared. Ching Ching raised her brows slightly with a murderous look in her eyes. Without transforming at all, she leaped into the air and crossed her legs, kicking out a series of afterimages in midair. Her long legs were like two gigantic guillotines that let out a series of explosions in midair. Ching Ching was already rather beautiful in her human form. Coupled with her slender figure, she was truly graceful like a swimming dragon when she leaped. Drip! Drip! On the ground, Linghu opened his mouth wide and dripped all over the ground. His gaze was dazed as he stuttered, those long legs seemed to split below the navel. Piak! Monkey sent Linghu flying with a backhand slap. Bang! 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 Ching Ching dodged the ferocious bird's sharp claws and hammered the ferocious bird's head with her legs, shattering it instantly. Cuckoo! A golden toad the size of a mountain squatted at the side with widened eyes. Puffing its cheeks, it let out a strange sound that grew louder and louder. It was like thunder rumbling as it rolled past. All of a sudden, the golden toad opened its mouth. A crimson light flashed and directly coiled around the little fox. This was actually the blood tongue of the Golden Toad clan. The speed was too fast, and he couldn't see it clearly. This was the Golden Toad clan's greatest killing move. They relied on this method to hunt other demonic beasts. Most demonic beasts couldn't react in time and would be swallowed by the Golden Toad. The little fox couldn't defend herself against such a move, but there wasn't a trace of panic or fear in her eyes. Any one of the figures standing beside her would be enough to kill the Golden Toad. Paw! Just as the blood tongue was about to touch the little fox, a hairy palm suddenly appeared and grabbed the Golden Toad's blood tongue. The bloody light in the monkey's eyes swirled as he stared at the Golden Toad not far away and grinned. Whoosh! The monkey exerted strength with both hands and tore off the blood tongue, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Boom! Immediately after, Monkey's feet landed on the ground and his body expanded. He walked in front of Gene Toad and swung his huge fist, smashing it down on Gene Toad. The Golden Toad retracted its broken tongue. Its mouth was full of blood and its eyes were filled with hatred. On the surface of its body, fist-sized blood blisters suddenly appeared and grew bigger and bigger. Snap! Su Zimo tapped gently with his finger and a bolt of divine thunder descended, striking the Golden Toad's head. The Golden Toad shuddered and the blood blisters on its body burst instantly, emitting thick smoke. The poisonous pus within had already been purified by the thunder. Bang! Monkey's fist smashed heavily on the Golden Toad's head, killing the ferocious beast instantly. More and more demon beasts surged over. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Follow me. Let's leave this place first. Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher from his storage bag. Bursting with blood chi, he killed his way through the beast horde, carving out a path of blood. When they arrived at the periphery, Su Zimo's group turned back. More and more demon beasts and cultivators surged into the vicinity of the mountain peak, fighting for the treasures in a frenzy. This was the ancient battlefield. Opportunities and dangers coexisted. Let's check out elsewhere. There seems to be some changes nearby. Su Zimo channeled heaven vision and earth hearing. After sensing for a while, he pointed in a direction and sped off with everyone. Before long, everyone came to a stop. Up ahead, in the middle of a swamp, there was also a palace that appeared. There were many spirit pills and miraculous medicines, as well as many weapons floating in midair. Countless cultivators and demon beasts of various factions and sects were fighting in midair, fighting for the weapons and elixirs. Fresh blood dyed the swamp red. Many corpses fell from midair into the swamp and were gradually devoured, vanishing. Su Zimo focused his gaze. Among the many weapons hovering in midair, there were some dermic weapons as well. However, the best of them only had 3 dermic patterns and were superior-grade dermic weapons. For most cultivators, superior-grade dermic weapons were worth fighting for. However, after hesitating for a moment, Su Zimo held it in and said deeply, "Let's go." Monkey and the others naturally did not have any objections. Everyone sprinted. Before long, everyone caught sight of another cave abode appearing. Another group of sects and factions were fighting here to fight for the treasures left behind in the cave abode. After observing for a while, Su Zimo shook his head and left with Monkey and the others. After a day of traveling, everyone went around and around. In this region, they caught sight of more than 10 cave abodes where various factions and sects were fighting. Among them, they even caught sight of disciples of super sects. Strange, Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He did not know what happened, but it seemed as though many cave abodes hidden in this region had appeared all of a sudden. As everyone sprinted, the sounds of fighting could be heard ahead once more. It was extremely noisy, accompanied by the roars of demon beasts and chirping of birds. It was another cave abode. The golden lion's gaze flickered as it murmured, "Eh." The rod that those people are fighting for seems to be a supreme-grade dermic weapon with 4 dermic patterns. In midair, 2 groups of cultivators were fighting. On one side, there were only 2 cultivators. On the other side, there were dozens of cultivators with pale faces. The qi around them was extremely heavy and their lips were purplish, they looked like malevolent ghosts from hell. Those cultivators stood motionlessly on the ground and wielded long rods in their hands, they were commanding dozens of lifeless corpses. Every single corpse emitted a pungent stench and shone with a metallic luster. They were invulnerable and no one knew what they were made of. Their fingernails were long and resembled sharp daggers. They shone with a ghastly green glow and were clearly poisonous. It was one of the 5 heretical doctrines, corpse refinement cult. Those corpses were battle corpses created exclusively by corpse refinement cult. They were invulnerable to weapons and possessed immense strength. Filled with poison, they were extremely frightening and troublesome to deal with. The dozens of corpses surrounded the 2 of them and attacked wildly. Chapter 678. Of the 2 of them, one of them was round and short, like an airbag. The other person had a buzz cut. He looked dull and simple, like an honest farmer. The silly cultivator wielded a slender metal rod in his left hand that was etched with many complicated patterns. Threads that were almost transparent burst forth from the fingertips of his right hand. Qi into threads. That was a secret skill of puppet sect, one of the 5 heretical doctrines. By condensing the spirit qi in one's dantian into threads and wrapping them around the puppets one had refined, one could control the puppets from a distance and use them to fight against enemies. However, the silly cultivator was controlling 5 different puppets at the same time. One of the puppets was extremely heavy and shone with a metallic luster. With every step it took, it would leave a deep footprint on the ground. Every move and every movement was filled with power and strength. The other puppet's body was made of an unknown material. It was almost transparent and looked weak like water, weak and powerless. The puppet's body was penetrated by the battle corpse and its flesh squirmed, mending the wound just now rapidly. The other puppet was scarlet and burned with raging flames. Every single move it made was accompanied by a scorching heat wave that caused the surrounding air to turn extremely dry. The silly cultivator was multitasking and cultivated 5 puppets that were of different elements, metal, wood, water, fire and earth, to form an array formation, and his combat strength increased tremendously. Amazing, the Golden Lion praised. Although most of the members of the demon clan were demons, they had fought with cultivators for a long time and had a rough idea of the cultivator's combat ability. However, although the silly cultivator was strong and could control 5 puppets, he could not defend against the frenzied attacks of dozens of battle corpses. The reason why the 2 of them were able to hold on until now was because of the Jean Dan phenomenon released by the fatty. It was a turbid yellow river that was mighty and rippled with waves. It emitted endless yin qi, as though it could cleanse and wash away all sins in the world. Many corpses floated in the yellow river. Boo! Boo! It was as though countless ghosts were struggling and howling. One after another, menacing faces appeared on the surface of the river. The Jean Dan phenomenon surrounded the 2 of them and protected them in the middle, creating waves that blocked the charging battle corpses. The battle corpses seemed to be rather wary of the yellow river. When the yellow river water splashed onto the battle corpses, sizzling sounds would be heard and green smoke would rise. As though they were sentient, the battle corpses shrieked and retreated, hopping on the spot. The terrifying greenish-black eyeballs bulged slightly. They were bloodshot and emitted a sense of fear. What is that? Little Fox shuddered. She felt a chill in the face of the yellow river. If not for the fact that Su Zimo and the others were standing in front of her, she would have retreated long ago. That's one of the ancient phenomenons, the Acheron. Su Zimo said slowly, in the era of the ancient emperors, the underworld emperor dissipated his soul with unparalleled courage and determination and took a trip to the gates of hell. When he saw the Acheron personally, he was inspired and created the Jean Dan phenomenon. It's said that there's an extremely powerful dragon vein hidden in the depths of the Acheron. With that, the underworld emperor created a peerless secret classic, the Dragon Quake Sutra, which is also the #1 secret classic for searching for Dragon Dianxue. Qing Qing frowned slightly and murmured with a thoughtful expression, "That fatty looks familiar." The torrential waves affected one's vision. However, after a while, Qing Qing realized that something was amiss. "It's little fatty from Misty Peak," Qing Qing exclaimed. After more than 20 years, little fatty had matured a lot and his features had changed. However, his silhouette remained the same. "That's right, it's him." Su Zimo nodded. The other cultivator is also an old friend. He was originally a cultivator of Southern Mountains sect named Shijian. You guys don't recognize him. The Underworld Emperor left behind his legacy in Tianhuang Mainland, Tomb's sect, one of the 5 heretical doctrines. In the elementary ancient battlefield, little fatty was taken away by someone from Tomb's sect. As for Shijian, he joined Puppet's sect, another one of the 5 major sections. "Fatty, I'm sorry for implicating you." Shijian's face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. It was clear that his spirit energy was depleted and he could not continue. Although controlling 5 puppets at the same time was strong in combat, the consumption of his spirit energy increased exponentially as well. What's the point of saying that? Hang in there and don't get distracted. We'll definitely be able to escape. Little Fatty waved his chubby palms and controlled the water of Acheron, creating waves one after another to defend against the attacks of the battle corpses outside. Even though that was the case, Little Fatty's Acheron phenomenon was already weakening and its might was decreasing. It was becoming unstable against the attacks of the battle corpses. Little Fatty defended against the battle corpses outside while saying, "Do you know why I'm asking for your help this time round?" "Why?" Shijian asked. "Are you dumb?" At that moment, Little Fatty was still optimistic and chuckled. As the saying goes, fortune favors fools. You're so dumb that you'll definitely have a good life. Who knows, I might be able to benefit from your help. You guys are still in the mood to chat? A corpse refinement cult cultivator had a cold expression as he slapped his storage bag, scattering a clump of yellow powder onto the battle corpse. Little Fatty sniffed and his expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, "It's berserk corpse powder." Before he finished his sentence, the battle corpses that were tainted with the yellow powder suddenly let out a series of hysterical roars. The battle corpses expanded and their clothes burst apart, revealing their bodies, necks and cheeks with veins that popped out. They were like tiny snakes that slithered on the surface of their skin in a menacing manner. As they roared, the battle corpses' mouths emitted a foul stench and 2 pairs of sharp fangs grew from their upper and lower jaws. They were stained with blood in a chilling manner. Bang! 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 The strength of the battle corpses increased tremendously as though they were in a frenzy. They were fearless of Acheron's power and charged at little Fatty's Jean Dan phenomenon repeatedly, causing a series of violent explosions. Instantly, Acheron's phenomenon trembled. In fact, Acheron River had even calmed down. Acheron's Jean Dan was a burial ground for hungry ghosts and the corpses of godfiends. But now, dozens of battle corpses stood within Acheron's Jean Dan and roared into the skies, as though they were suppressing Acheron with a torrential ferocity. A look of resentment flashed through little Fatty's eyes. If the underworld emperor knew that Acheron's phenomenon had been reduced to such a state and was suppressed by the corpses, he would definitely explode. Suddenly, a voice sounded. It was neither loud nor soft, but it drowned out the roars of the battle corpses and spread to every single corner of the battlefield. A bunch of evil fiends who can't even see the light of day. How dare you act so brazenly in this ancient battlefield where the blood of emperors was spilled? When he heard that voice, little Fatty shuddered and his bean-sized eyes widened in disbelief. Shi Jian panted heavily, but he had a suspicious expression as well. This voice sounded somewhat familiar. "It's Boss!" little Fatty exclaimed. "Boss?" Shi Jian froze for a moment before asking, "Brother Su of Misty Peak?" "There's no mistake." Little Fatty propped up Acheron's phenomenon and leaped up, looking outside with all his might. He waved excitedly and shouted, "Boss, I'm here. Hurry and save me." Chapter 679. Corpse Refinement Cult is doing something here. Which blind fool is that? The leader of the Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators glared at Su Zimo's group with widened eyes that resembled a dead fish. His voice was sinister and his face was filled with killing intent. Another person said coldly, "You beasts had better scram far away. Otherwise, with the supreme secret skills of Corpse Refinement Cult, I can refine you guys into battle corpses with ease and make you suffer a fate worse than death." "Is that so?" Su Zimo raised his brow slightly. Without any visible movements, he moved like an arrow and charged into the crowd of Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators in the blink of an eye. He was way too fast. The distance between the two parties was not far to begin with. Su Zimo's inner core and Jean Dan were already at perfected state. Circulating both cores at the same time, he channeled his demonic and spirit energy at the same time, coupled with his power of blood chi. Even pure-blooded ferocious beasts with sharp senses and strong physiques would not be able to react to such a burst, let alone the Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators. Poof! 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 There were no moves or spirit arts. He was just charging forward with his body alone. Right in front of everyone, the Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators in front of Su Zimo were like gigantic watermelons that were smashed into pieces, leaving behind blood mists. He was a lethal weapon in the human world. He crushed his way through the crowd and no one could withstand his sharpness. 7 Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators were still sneering a moment ago. The next moment, they were smashed to death without any corpse left. A Corpse Refinement Cult cultivator reacted and instinctively placed his Chaos Essence iron rod in front of him. Unexpectedly, a black shadow charged over. Snap! The iron rod in his hands was snapped into 2. The broken part was as sharp as a spear, piercing into his chest and directly penetrating through. Another Corpse Refinement Cult cultivator hollered and withdrew a shimmering silver shield from his storage bag, injecting spirit energy furiously. Instantly, a bright light shone brightly. The shield expanded against the wind like a silver mountain, protecting that person firmly behind it. It shone with 5 bedazzling spirit lights. a perfect-grade defensive spirit artifact. If a perfect spirit weapon was placed in the cultivation world of the Great Zhou dynasty, it would definitely cause quite a stir. However, Su Zimo's expression did not change. There was not even the slightest fluctuation in his eyes. He had seen too many of these weapons. Right now, he had dozens of perfect-grade spirit weapons in his storage bag alone. Su Zimo's speed did not change. His eyes were cold and indifferent. He leaped up slightly and took a step forward, stomping heavily on the huge silver shield. Plow Heaven Stride. A monstrous aura burst forth from Su Zimo's body. Even the sky would be left with a huge ravine under his feet, let alone a mountain in front of him. Rumble. Su Zimo stomped on the shining silver shield beneath his feet. The corpse refinement cult cultivator hiding behind the shield did not make a single sound before he was stomped into a pile of flesh by Su Zimo through the shield without a corpse. Su Zimo was getting increasingly familiar with the many killing moves of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. As his cultivation of the demonic Dao deepened, the power of those killing moves turned increasingly terrifying as well. The crowd was in an uproar. Not far away, there were many cultivators who were about to join the battle. When they saw that, they stopped in their tracks instinctively and were dumbfounded with shocked expressions. It was way too ferocious. In the blink of an eye, 9 corpse refinement cult cultivators died in the hands of that green-robed cultivator. The most frightening thing was that the 9 of them could not fight back at all against the green-robed cultivator. Who is that person? What's his background? I don't know. The ancient battlefield is way too scary. Indeed, paragons roam freely with monster incarnates everywhere. That's right. Notwithstanding the legacy disciples of the super sects, I heard that there's another monster incarnate that's extremely rare in the North region. I know that person as well. It's said that he has a feud with Glass Palace. After entering this place, he massacred the tens of thousands of cultivators at the Glass Palace gathering point. Ah, so ruthless. There was a hubbub of voices as people discussed spiritedly. On the battlefield, the remaining corpse refinement cult cultivators were shocked and retreated hurriedly, manipulating their battle corpses not far away to turn around. Almost all of the capabilities of the corpse refinement cult cultivators came from their battle corpses. Without the protection of their battle corpses, their bodies were weak and their strength was not much different from ordinary cultivators. The leader of the corpse refinement cult cultivators said coldly with a cold expression, "You're truly courting death. Our corpse refinement cult disciples are constantly accompanied by corpses and are tainted with corpse poison. You won't be able to escape death by smashing their bodies." That's right. Another corpse refinement cult cultivator sneered, "B*****, can you feel that your blood chi is starting to weaken?" Hee hee. Ha ha ha. Su Zimo reared his head in laughter. His voice was bright and resounding as his blood chi surged with the sound of a tsunami. There were no signs of being poisoned in his current state. His bloodline was like a blazing furnace. It incinerated, vaporized and purified everything. Even the lethal poison of Poison sect might not be able to pose any threat to him, let alone corpse poison. The faces of the corpse refinement cult cultivators turned even paler. A tall and mighty figure charged forward and swung his fists like a pair of gigantic hammers into the crowd, barging left and right. There was no way the corpse refinement cult cultivators could defend against Monkey's iron fists. One after another, figures were sent flying. By the time they landed on the ground, they were already lifeless corpses. An evil gust of wind blew. A white-browed tiger emitted a rumbling malevolent aura as though it was starving. It lunged down from the mountain and tore apart the body of a corpse refinement cult cultivator, ripping his stomach apart. The moment the corpse poison on the corpses made contact with the Linghu's fur, a bolt of lightning flashed and turned the corpse poison into nothingness. Roar! A majestic golden lion barged into the crowd and let out a deafening roar. The corpse refinement cult cultivators closest to it froze as blood seeped out from the corners of their eyes, nostrils, ears and mouths. They were bleeding from all 7 orifices. The brains of these cultivators had already been shaken into paste. Ching Ching and Little Fox did not head forward. Of course, they would stay far away from these sinister cultivators who reeked of rotting death. Even so, it took less than 10 breaths for Su Zimo, Monkey, the Ling Hu, and the Golden Lion to kill the dozens of corpse refinement cult cultivators. The dozens of battle corpses that surrounded Little Fatty and Shi Jian earlier on did not even have the time to save them before everything was over. In reality, corpse refinement cult cultivators were rather troublesome existences in the cultivation world. Unless absolutely necessary, disciples of many super sects would not want to provoke them. The battle corpses they refined were invulnerable to weapons, fire and water. Furthermore, they were extremely strong and could fight against perfect or even connate spirit weapons. With the battle corpses at the front, the corpse refinement cult cultivators were almost invincible. However, the weakness of the corpse refinement cult cultivators was rather obvious as well. The moment they died, the battle corpses would lose control and pose no threat. Su Zimo and the others seized on that weakness and did not give the corpse refinement cult cultivators any chance to catch their breaths. With a thunderous momentum, they suppressed them within a dozen breaths. The dozens of battle corpses collapsed stiffly and turned into true corpses. Chapter 680. Little Fatty had just swallowed a few elixirs, and before he could even catch his breath, he saw that the corpse refinement cult cultivators had already been killed. Little Fatty's mouth was agape and his eyes were widened, his jaw nearly dropped to the ground. The rumors are true. Brother Su is still as ferocious as ever. Shi Jian gulped and lamented from the bottom of his heart. Boss, thank goodness you're here. I missed you so much. Little Fatty did not change his true colors. Like a huge meatball, he rolled over and pounced into Su Zimo's embrace, crying agitatedly with snot and tears running down his face. Su Zimo pushed that chubby face away and scolded jokingly, "Cut it out." Shi Jian walked over as well and cupped his fists towards Su Zimo with a silly smile. "Thank you, Brother Su. Why are you being so polite after 20 years? Su Zimo chuckled with a relaxed expression. Back in Shantian City in the elementary ancient battlefield, he fought against the 4 mounted bandits alone. Little Fatty, Ji Qingtian, Ling Rou, and Shi Jian returned to fight alongside him in a heroic manner. They were brothers who had gone through thick and thin together. Little Fatty smiled. Silly Jian is silly. Don't bother about him, boss. Little Fatty's excitement after reuniting with the 3 of them after a long time was indescribable. Shi Jian did not say much and merely chuckled foolishly. Although Su Zimo looked rather calm, the smile on his face increased unknowingly. Thank you for your help, brothers of the demon race. Little Fatty cupped his fists towards Monkey and the others and thanked them with a grin. He was a sociable person to begin with. Furthermore, he had already gotten to know Monkey and Ling Hu back on Misty Peak. Boss, I heard about what happened in the North region from Silly Jian. Little Fatty consoled, don't be afraid. Follow me back to the sect this time round and I'll beg Master to take you in. Although Toon's sect's legacy is weak, we have a long history after all and have some foundation. Furthermore, Toon's sect's forte is concealment. Outsiders won't be able to find our residence at all. Almost everyone in the North region knew that Su Zimo had offended Glass Palace. Ordinary cultivators would avoid Su Zimo the moment they saw him, afraid that they would be implicated. However, Little Fatty did not have any such considerations when he saw Su Zimo. Instead, he was helping Su Zimo with ideas and ideas. Touched, Su Zimo patted Little Fatty on the shoulder. Although it sounded like an idea, it was not too practical. Little Fatty was a perfected being Jean Dan. Even if he was a legacy disciple, his words did not carry much weight in the sect. It was impossible for most sects to offend a super sect like Glass Palace for him alone. The losses outweighed the gains. Furthermore, although Toon's sect was one of the 5 heretical doctrines, it was common knowledge that they had few disciples and could not go against Glass Palace. Brother Su, I can head back and tell them that puppet sect. Shi Jian mustered his courage and wanted to share Su Zimo's burden. Su Zimo waved it off with a smile and changed the topic. It's nothing much. Let's talk about this in the future. Right, why did you guys get into a fight with those corpse refinement cult cultivators? Shi Jian gripped his fists and said hatefully, puppet sect and corpse refinement cult are mortal enemies to begin with. There's naturally no way they would let me off when they caught sight of me. Oh? Su Zimo raised his brows slightly. In Tianhuang mainland, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 heretical doctrines and 4 unorthodox groups, there were indeed mortal enemies among those super sects with a long history of feuds. For example, Heavenly Dipper sect of the immortal sects and Malevolent Earth sect of the fiend sects were mortal enemies. There were such opposing factions among the immortal sects as well. For example, Glass Palace had an extremely bad relationship with Snowdrift Valley of the Middle Continent. Shi Jian said, initially, there were no 5 heretical doctrines. Corpse refinement cult was created by a traitor of Puppet sect. That person was the most talented cultivator of Puppet sect and had hopes of becoming an emperor if he continued cultivating. However, he eventually walked down the path of evil and placed all his attention on corpses. In order to refine corpses, that person became addicted to killing and committed heinous crimes. He cultivated until he was neither human nor ghost and finally incurred the wrath of the sect. Everyone was engrossed when they heard Shi Jian talk about the past of Puppet sect. When Shi Jian paused for a moment, Little Fox could not help but ask, and then? Shi Jian heaved a sigh of relief. Some experts of the sect pitied his talent and could not bear to cripple his cultivation. They tried to persuade him but were killed by him instead. Sigh, that person is truly powerful. Even when many experts of the sect joined forces, he managed to kill his way out. Although the patriarchs of the sect were alarmed eventually, that person was already a force to be reckoned with. At that time, he even joined forces with one of the heretical doctrines, Poison sect. If they were to kill him with everything they had, Puppet sect would be in danger of being destroyed as well. Helpless, Puppet sect could only allow him to leave. Not long after, he created corpse refinement cult in Tianhuang mainland and gradually grew in power, becoming one of the 5 heretical doctrines. No wonder. When he heard that, a look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Just now, I vaguely realized that the method of controlling battle corpses of corpse refinement cult is similar to the methods of Puppet sect. One is evil and the other is righteous. So, they're from the same sect. It's a pity. Although they were once from the same sect, they're like fire and water now, Shi Jian said. Little Fatty shifted his beady eyes and looked around. When he saw that more cultivators were gathering, he whispered, "Let's go. We can't stay here for long. Let's leave first." Yes, Su Zimo nodded. You guys leave first. I'll go and snatch that metal rod over. Although their fight with corpse refinement cult had ended, the commotion here alerted even more cultivators. Right now, there were already many cultivators and demon beasts fighting for the supreme-grade dermic weapon with 4 dermic patterns in midair. That was the item that Su Zimo had his eyes on as well. They had wandered around for an entire day and passed by more than 10 cave abodes. That dermic weapon was of the highest grade. Don't go. Little Fatty tugged at Su Zimo's arm hurriedly and whispered, "There's no need to fight for that scrap metal. Let's go somewhere else." Ah! Su Zimo froze for a moment. Wasn't that a little too arrogant? In the eyes of Little Fatty, supreme-grade dermic weapons were only scrap metal? Little Fatty said mysteriously, "Follow me. I'll bring you guys to another place." What? Su Zimo could not help but ask. Instead of answering, Little Fatty asked, "How many cave abodes did you guys see today?" Su Zimo replied, "More than 10. Yes, Little Fatty was not surprised at all. According to my calculations, there will be more than 10 cave abodes like that. That many? Su Zimo was shocked and asked with a frown, "Why are there so many cave abodes here? Did something happen here?" I guess so. Little Fatty retracted his rare smile and said in a deep voice, there's a gigantic tomb beneath this place. The true treasures are all within this tomb. As for these cave abodes that appeared, they are merely illusions left behind by the tomb owner. End of chapter 1. Chapter 681. When he heard that, a look of shock flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. What extravagance! In order to hide the treasures and inheritance he left behind, the legendary owner of the tomb spared no effort to set up dozens of suspicious cave abodes as a smokescreen. Not only that, there were many treasures in the dozens of suspicious graves, causing countless cultivators and demons to fight and corpses to litter the ground. Su Zimo speculated, the owner of the tomb must be someone extraordinary to have so many treasures. The owner of the tomb is a conjoint body mighty figure. Little Fatty's tone was certain. No wonder. Su Zimo nodded. Most likely, only conjoint body mighty figures would have the foundation to disregard these spirit and dermic weapons and store them in suspicious cave abodes to confuse others. Little Fatty hesitated for a moment before saying, that mighty figure was once the titular disciple of Tomb's sect. Ah! Su Zimo was shocked. The old monk in the old temple had once warned him that apart from legacy disciples, the strongest successors of the super sects were the titular disciples. Furthermore, there was only one titular disciple. They were the cream of the crop among all the legacy disciples in the sect. A disciple who could obtain a titular disciple of a sect had to defeat countless paragons. In the fiend's sects, it was a path paved with blood and corpses. A general success was built on thousands of corpses. Titular disciples were peerless paragons. Titular disciples were the face of a super sect and dominated the world. Their status in the sect was extraordinary and they could command all the disciples in the sect. In fact, their status was even higher than most elders. Up till this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had only met a single true titular disciple, Shura Yen Baichen. Recalling Yen Baichen's methods in the battle at Misty Peak, the strength of titular disciples was evident. In that lifetime, Yen Baichen was even the number 1 of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. This mighty figure of Tomb's sect was once the titular disciple of Tomb's sect. Back then, he must have been a peerless elite who looked down on the world and dominated Tianhuang mainland. Little Fatty lamented, it's a pity that this senior failed to enter the Mahayana realm and was buried here in the end. After fusing, it would be the Mahayana realm. For the human race, there was an old saying that it was difficult to comprehend divine abilities without reaching the Mahayana stage. This meant that only by stepping into the Mahayana realm could one comprehend divine abilities. As the saying goes, one's magic power is boundless, and one's supernatural powers are vast. Even conjoint body mighty figures had not completely broken free from the restraints of heaven and earth and were still channeling dermic powers to release dermic arts. In the end, dermic powers were no match for divine abilities. In the world of cultivation, spiritual energy was no match for magical energy, and magical energy was no match for supernatural powers. What was a divine ability? It was simply inconceivable and beyond imagination. This was a godly ability that could reach the heavens. Divine abilities had already broken through the shackles of heaven and earth. It was an even more terrifying level of power. In one of the ancient books in the temple, there was a saying that described the capabilities of a Mahayana realm ancestor. The Mahayana realm is indestructible, reborn from a single drop of blood. In other words, Mahayana realm experts were almost indestructible. Even if their bodies were shattered and their limbs were severed, they could recover to their original state with a single drop of blood. Methods as such were truly inconceivable and fascinating. Only by cultivating to that realm could one barely be considered as an immortal. As his cultivation deepened and his understanding of the cultivation world increased, he understood what Dayu said back then: Chi refinement warriors were *T immortals. Even perfected being Jin Dan would not dare to call himself an immortal. Even a titular disciple of Tomb's sect died before the Mahayana realm without being able to take that step forward. It was easy to imagine how terrifying that realm was. Little Fatty said, "Boss, I won't hide it from you anymore. The reason why I entered the ancient battlefield this time round was because the sect gave us a test. Test? Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and asked, you guys? Yes, little fatty nodded. That senior carried an utmost treasure of the sect with him. After he went missing, that treasure went missing as well. It was only until a few decades ago when the patriarch appeared and requested the help of an expert of Enigma Palace that they roughly deduced that this senior had already perished and was most likely buried in the intermediate ancient battlefield. Su Zimo understood and said, so, the sect's test for you is to locate that tomb and retrieve that utmost treasure of the sect? That's right, little fatty said, that utmost treasure belonged to the Underworld Emperor and is extremely important to the sect. The reason why my Acheron phenomenon isn't powerful is because I lost that utmost treasure. I see, Su Zimo was enlightened. Just now, when he saw little fatty release Acheron phenomenon, he felt that the true might of that phenomenon was not released. The true Acheron phenomenon could definitely be ranked in the top 20 of the Gene Dan phenomenon ranking. Little fatty continued, however, this test isn't set for me alone. There's a senior brother of mine as well. Whoever obtains that utmost treasure of the sect first will be qualified to become the titular disciple of Tomb's sect for this generation. Su Zimo understood. Tomb's sect's test for little fatty was not only to locate the tomb and retrieve the Underworld Emperor's relic, but also to obtain it before someone else. This test was equivalent to determining little fatty's future. Su Zimo asked, can I get help? Of course, little fatty nodded. Su Zimo urged, there's no time to lose. Let's go. Lead the way. Little fatty wanted to say something but hesitated and did not move immediately. What's wrong? Su Zimo was puzzled. Little fatty said with a hesitant expression, that senior brother of mine grew up in Tomb's sect and once roamed the middle continent. He befriended disciples of some super sects and has a deep network. This time round, he's definitely going to invite some super sects as helpers. Boss, you. Little fatty did not continue, but Su Zimo already understood. Little fatty was worried about him. He had already fallen out with Glass Palace. If he offended another two super sects because of this matter, he would truly be courting death. It's nothing, Su Zimo smiled casually and patted little fatty on the shoulder, saying casually, I'm not even afraid, what are you worried about? But, Su Zimo interrupted and burst into laughter. Don't forget, if we're talking about offending, I offended all the immortal, fiend and Buddhist sects beneath the human emperor's palace 20 years ago. Boss, little fatty was emotional and his eyes reddened. At the end of the day, he was someone who came later in Tomb's sect. When they heard that he was going to fight with his senior brother for the utmost treasure of the sect, none of his fellow disciples, including some seniors, stood on his side. He did not know many people in the cultivation world either. After entering the ancient battlefield, his senior brother was filled with confidence and left after leaving behind some harsh words to find a super sect to back him up. As for him, he could only travel alone helplessly. It would be a lie to say that little fatty did not feel aggrieved all these years. However, he knew that no matter how aggrieved he was, he could only endure it. The more aggrieved he could endure, the greater his accomplishments would be in the future. Now that he heard Su Zimo's words, little fatty felt a warmth in his heart. His nose turned sour as he choked and muttered to himself, I have helpers as well. I have a boss. Leng Ming, this is what you get for bullying me. Let's wait and see. Chapter 682. Fatty, there's still me, Shi Jian smiled foolishly. Although I'm a little weak, I'll help you as well. Brother Fatty, we'll all help you. Little Fox was an emotional person to begin with. At that moment, she raised her fists and cheered for little Fatty with a coquettish voice that was extremely pleasant to the ears. During this period of time, she had been by Su Zimo's side and had weathered many storms. She was no longer as timid as before and had become much more cheerful. Su Zimo smiled. Fatty, if you don't mind, the 7 of us will stand on your side. What are you talking about, boss? Little Fatty rolled up his sleeves and wiped his tears haphazardly. Patting his chest with his chubby palms, he promised loudly, "Boss, apart from that utmost treasure of the sect, you guys can take all the treasures in this tomb. There's no need for that. After all, that belongs to Tomb's sect." Su Zimo shook his head. "You must take it." Little Fatty widened his eyes and said seriously, "We might encounter many dangers along the way. If we encounter Ling Ming, there'll definitely be a fight. You guys deserve all the treasures in the tomb." Ling Ming was Little Fatty's senior brother. Based on Little Fatty's words, it was clear that the two of them did not have a good relationship. Su Zimo remained silent. This was the tomb of a conjoint body mighty figure. This was a conjoint body mighty figure who was once a titular disciple. The items in his tomb were definitely rare treasures. How could there be no treasures in the true tomb of someone who could use dozens of cave abodes as a decoy tomb to confuse others? When Little Fatty saw that Su Zimo was still hesitating, he was a little angry. "Boss, don't decline anymore. Ling Ming must have promised the treasures in the tomb for the disciples of super sects to help him. For the two of us, the only thing we have to get our hands on is that utmost treasure of the sect." "All right," Su Zimo nodded. "If I encounter something suitable, I'll take it." "It's decided then. Let's go." Little Fatty cheered and took out a round compass from his bosom. The surface of the feng shui compass was densely covered with countless concentric circles. They were filled with stars, the 5 elements, and yin and yang, and seemed to contain boundless mysteries. Little Fatty looked at the compass and carefully identified the direction. He pointed to the southeast and said in a deep voice, "This way." Su Zimo and the others followed closely behind. After galloping for nearly half an hour, Little Fatty suddenly stopped and looked at the compass again. After a while, he pointed to the other side and said, "This way." Su Zimo and the others had no objections. Although his battle prowess was strong, he knew nothing about this aspect. Every single one of them had their own strengths. Su Zimo was no match for Little Fatty when it came to searching for the dragon Dianxue. In terms of controlling puppets and multitasking, he was no match for Shi Jian. Shi Jian was honest and not very bright. In fact, he was even a little slow. However, he was chosen by Puppet Sect, one of the 5 heretical doctrines, and was taken in as a disciple. Su Zimo had wondered about that before. Why did Puppet Sect choose Shi Jian? Along the way, Shi Jian answered that question for him. If one wanted to cultivate the art of puppetry, they had to have the ability to multitask. However, when one's mind was too sharp and agile, it would be difficult for them to multitask. Shi Jian did not let Su Zimo try multitasking 5 times. Instead, he allowed him to multitask 2 times. He tried drawing a square and a circle on the ground at the same time. Su Zimo tried a few times but to no avail. He could only chuckle bitterly. Although he was the strongest monster incarnate in history, he was not omniscient and omnipotent. When Little Fatty searched for the true location of the tomb, he was no longer smiling and was extremely serious. Under the Little Fatty's lead, the group continued to move forward. They passed through wastelands, deserts, swamps, mountains, and jungles, sometimes to the east, sometimes to the west. The direction was erratic as it swayed forward. As Little Fatty had expected, they encountered many cave abodes along the way. There were already more than 10 of them. There were many cultivators fighting around those cave abodes as well. This mighty figure of Tomb's sect is truly incredible. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. This is such a complicated area with dozens of suspicious cave abodes. Unless it's a coincidence, who would be able to find his tomb? However, on second thought, Su Zimo understood as well. This tomb should have been prepared by this mighty figure for the successor of Tomb's sect. Only the successors of Tomb's sect would be able to differentiate between the dozens of tombs and cave abodes and locate the true tomb. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours passed. It was already late at night. Everyone did not stop and sprinted the entire way. They did not know how long they had traveled, but in reality, they had yet to leave this area. Up ahead, Little Fatty suddenly paused in his tracks and fell into deep thought with the compass in his hand. What's wrong? When Su Zimo saw that little fatty did not move for a long time, he could not help but ask. "I'm lost." Little fatty had an innocent and lost expression as well. "Ah!" Everyone was stunned. If even little fatty was lost, there was nothing they could do. Su Zimo glanced at the compass in little fatty's hands. Initially, there was an essence magnetic needle on the compass. But now, the essence magnetic needle was completely messed up and was spinning wildly on the compass. They could not even determine their direction, let alone find the tomb. Su Zimo frowned and asked, "What's wrong with the compass?" "I don't know either." Little fatty said in distress, "After we arrived here, the compass suddenly became like this." The moment he said that, little fatty's eyes lit up and he exchanged glances with Su Zimo. Both of them said at the same time, "The tomb is here." Everyone looked around. There was a lush mountain peak in the distance and everyone was surrounded by greenery as well. Not far away, there was a small lake with little beasts drinking from it in a peaceful manner. Even though they had deduced that the great tomb was in the vicinity, no one knew its exact location. Linghu shouted, "Since the tomb is here, let's strike at the same time and smash the ground. It's only a matter of time before we smash a hole in the ground." "No," shaking his head, Su Zimo replied, "This region is neither big nor small. We don't even know how deep the tomb is from the ground. How long are we going to have to smash it like this?" "That's right. I'm afraid that the commotion here will attract countless cultivators before we even find the tomb." Ching Ching nodded as well. "We mustn't." Little fatty said with a grim expression, "There must be many restrictions set up in this senior's tomb. If we don't know how and forcefully destroy them, we'll definitely incur a backlash from the restrictions." When he heard that, Linghu shuddered and did not dare to say anything else. Once the restrictions set up by a conjoint body mighty figure were triggered, he would not be able to survive even if he had 10 lives. Little fatty raised his head and looked into the skies. His gaze flickered as he gradually understood. "I've got it." A moment later, little fatty leaped up in delight. "This is the legendary astral dragon sputum lair." Chapter 683. Shi Jian asked curiously, "What's the astral dragon sputum lair?" Little fatty beamed and became more excited the more he thought about it. It's a burial technique from the ancient era that has been lost for a long time. To think that this senior would be able to set it up. Little fatty was excited for a moment before calming down and asking instead, "Do you remember the dozens of dubious cave abodes we encountered previously?" Everyone nodded. Little fatty chuckled. Although the dozens of dubious cave abodes are a smokescreen, they're actually a part of the tomb. To be precise, they're the key to finding the location of the tomb. The dozens of dubious tombs correspond to dozens of stars in the firmaments. Although they seem messy, they form a dragon vein, which is what Tomb sect refers to as a dragon vein. There were 2 types of dragon veins. One was formed naturally while the other was created postnatally. Dragon veins had the ability to gather fortune and improve feng shui. It was extremely mysterious and it was extremely difficult to create a dragon vein postnatally. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Ordinary cultivators could not see the location of dragon veins. However, legacy disciples of Tomb sect could sense the existence of dragon veins. Furthermore, they could make use of the power of dragon veins to kill their enemies. It was extremely powerful. Everyone followed little fatty's gaze and looked up. Right now, the night was dark. The firmaments were dotted with stars. Right above this area, there were dozens of stars that were particularly bright, reflecting the light of the dozens of dubious tombs on the ground. There was a mysterious connection between them. Although the arrangement of the stars seemed messy, one could tell that it was a dragon vein if they were connected by a single vein. Dragon tail, dragon claws, dragon head, dragon body, everything was present. Su Zimo closed his eyes and could almost see a gigantic dragon with towering horns hanging upside down in the firmaments, looking down on all life with cold eyes. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt a strange movement within his body. His blood qi surged, as though he had formed a vague connection with the gigantic dragon in the firmaments. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he opened his eyes. That feeling vanished once more. Su Zimo did not think too much about it, thinking that it was a change brought about by his cultivation of the ancient dragonification skill. Little Fatty pondered for a long time. As if he had thought of something, he blurted out, "I know." "What?" Everyone looked at him with a trace of doubt in their eyes. Little Fatty said slowly, "The reason why this tomb has been buried for so long and has only just emerged is because the dragon vein here has only just formed. Dragon veins are almost all formed by the world. They are innate. How could it be so easy to create them? This senior of Tombs sect set up the astral dragon sputum layer to connect the heavens and earth, guiding the power of the stars into this place to gather the karmic luck of the world to refine the dragon veins. It was only in this life that the dragon vein was truly completed." Shi Jian couldn't help but ask, "When did this senior die?" Little Fatty said solemnly, "At least tens of thousands of years." "Ah!" Everyone was dumbfounded, unable to conceal the shock in their eyes. "Amazing!" Su Zimo praised in his heart in admiration. Using an ancient secret skill to connect the heavens and earth, he spent tens of thousands of years to create a dragon vein and leave behind his legacy. Although the mighty figure of Tombs sect had yet to advance to the Mahayana realm, his methods could be considered as godly and omnipotent. "Brother Fatty, what do you mean by the dragon sputum layer just now?" Little Fox blinked her watery eyes and asked curiously. Linghu urged as well, "Fatty, after all that talk, where's the entrance to the tomb?" The reason why he was in a hurry to enter the tomb was because he wanted to get a few more treasures. Qing could tell what Linghu was thinking and glared at him with a warning look. Su Zimo smiled gently. After all, Qing had stayed in Misty Peak for a long time and knew some things. Although Little Fatty promised that they could take any treasures in the tomb, this was the tomb of a mighty figure of Tombs sect after all. If they were to take anything they saw casually and keep it in their storage bags, that would be greedy. Furthermore, they did not know the situation in the tomb. Linghu coughed gently to hide his awkwardness with an embarrassed expression after Qing saw through his intentions. Little Fatty pointed to a lake not far away and said in a deep voice, "If I'm not wrong, that lake should be the entrance to the tomb." "It's beneath the lake." The Golden Lion was doubtful. The lake looked inconspicuous and its water was murky, there was nothing special about it. Little Fatty pointed to the firmaments. "Everyone, take a look at the direction of the dragon vein." Everyone raised their heads. Little Fatty continued, "This is the tail and this is the body of the dragon. Winding upwards, the stars are denser and the head is where the dragon head is. The corner of the mouth below the dragon head is where the dragon saliva is. This lake corresponds to the dragon saliva." Everyone was enlightened. Shi Jian was the only one who was still confused and scratched his head. "I don't know, I'll just follow you guys." "Follow me." Little Fatty waved his hand and led the way towards the lake not far away. It was only when they approached the lake that everyone noticed something strange. There was a hint of coldness to the lake and it was lifeless. The little fox could not help but shudder. She hid behind Su Zimo and tugged at Su Zimo's sleeve secretly. Su Zimo glanced sideways. He saw the little fox raising her head, revealing her tender neck. She looked at him with pitiful eyes. She was obviously afraid, but she bit her lips and didn't make a sound. Su Zimo could not help but chuckle. There was no way he did not know what the little fox was thinking. "Come on in. Don't do it again." Su Zimo nodded with a smile. The little fox giggled and transformed into her true form. A fiery red fox wagged her furry tail and crawled into Su Zimo's embrace from beside his feet. Her movements were unusually practiced and only half of her head was revealed, blinking her large eyes happily. Instantly, the little fox felt a sense of warmth when she burrowed into Su Zimo's embrace. The chilling aura emanating from the lake vanished without a trace. Su Zimo's body was as warm as a furnace. If not for the fact that they were about to enter the tomb, she would have wanted to take a nap. When he saw that, Linghu's eyes shifted and an idea came to him. Puffing out his chest, he strode to Qing Qing's side and declared heroically, "Qing Qing, don't be afraid. Hu Baishan's chest is here to warm you up. Hurry, crawl in as well." As he said that, Linghu opened up his chest and revealed a patch of black and yellow chest hair. Monkey rolled his eyes. The little fox burst into laughter. "Holy F***ck. You can do that?" The golden lion's jaw nearly dropped to the ground and he was speechless. Qing Qing's face was livid as she gripped her fists tightly and snarled, "Scram." Scratching his head, Linghu stole glances at Qing Qing's slightly puffed chest and stammered, "Qing Qing, it's fine if you don't want to. Why don't you open up your chest and let me crawl in instead?" The entire place went silent. The golden lion roared internally, "I've never seen such a shameless person." Without a second word, Qing Qing raised her long legs and kicked Linghu's buttocks fiercely. There was a thud. Linghu was kicked into the lake in a wretched manner. Everyone burst into laughter. Just now, the chilling aura seemed to have dissipated significantly. Little Fatty waved his hand. "Come, let's go down as well." Chapter 684. All of them were Jin Dan realm experts. After entering the water, Monkey and the others channeled their inner cores and released their demonic chi, forming a demonic chi barrier around them that blocked out the lake water. Little Fatty and Shijian released their spirit energy to form a spirit energy barrier as well, allowing them to breathe freely. It was pitch black beneath the lake. The lake water was extremely murky as well. Although Su Zimo's vision was strong, it could not see through objects. His vision was not good with the mess of murky things blocking his vision. Su Zimo was extremely cautious and his eyes were bright as his ears twitched. He did not dare to be careless. Although the location of the Great Tomb was confirmed, no one knew what was in the lake. The ancient battlefield was a space of its own and had existed for an unknown amount of time. It would not be strange for any monsters to be born in this lifeless lake water. Furthermore, they had not discovered any traces of Little Fatty's senior brother, Ling Ming, up till now. It was unknown if he had arrived here first. Little Fox was in Su Zimo's embrace and the remaining 7 people formed a circle, protecting Qing Qing in the middle as they sank slowly. Although the lake water was cold when they first entered, everyone was able to withstand it with their high cultivation. Now that they were deeper into the lake, the surrounding water turned increasingly cold and emitted a bone-chilling coldness that even showed signs of penetrating their demonic chi and spirit energy barriers. Not only that, the deeper they sank, the greater the pressure in the lake water. Right now, apart from Su Zimo, even Monkey felt a sense of pressure and had difficulty breathing. This lake doesn't look impressive, but it's this deep. Linghu was secretly shocked. Monkey frowned slightly and asked, "How deep have we sunk?" Su Zimo replied darkly, "We're more than 3,000 feet down. Over 300 zhang, that was 10,000 meters. The pressure at 10,000 meters underwater was frighteningly immense. If ordinary Jin Dan perfected beings were to enter this place, they would have bled from all orifices and died a sudden death. There was no way they could have lasted till now. Furthermore, there was a pervasive chilling chi in the lake water. Linghu secretly thanked his lucky stars. If they were to do as he said and smash everything on the ground, they would not be able to find this place even if they smashed everything until the next year. The lake water was turbid and the bottom was pitch black. It was like a bottomless abyss, waiting for everyone to jump in. It was eerie and terrifying. The pressure around them was getting stronger and stronger. Other than Su Zimo, who was still able to remain calm, everyone else's demon aura and spiritual energy had begun to shrink. The golden lion was a little anxious. If this continued, when would it end? If it sank another 10,000 meters, even Su Zimo wouldn't be able to withstand it and would explode to death. How much further? The golden lion was panting with difficulty. Su Zimo shook his head. In such an environment, his 5 senses were completely restricted. Su Zimo muttered, "Let's go down a little more. If we still haven't reached the bottom of the lake, you guys go up first." I'll go down and explore myself. The little fatty waved it off. He was sweating profusely and could not even speak. Slapping his storage bag, he took out a jade green bead. The bead was the size of a baby's fist and seemed to be surging with jade waves within. It was dazzling and beautiful. The moment the bead was taken out, it released a mysterious power that repelled the lake water around the 9 of them, forming a jade blue light barrier. It was extremely spacious and could fit at least dozens of people. Not only did the light barrier defend against the pressure of the lake water, it even isolated most of the chilling chi in the water. Everyone felt invigorated and heaved a sigh of relief instinctively. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Water repellent bead? Water repellent beads were mostly made from the inner cores of river demons and sea demons. For this water repellent bead to possess such power and be able to create such a massive light barrier at a depth of 10,000 meters, it was definitely made from the inner cores of sea demons. For land cultivators, the inner cores of sea demons were way too rare. There were 3 deep seas in Tianhuang mainland and the demon races in the deep seas were even more diverse. Coupled with the unique environment, land cultivators and demons did not dare to enter the seas easily. Of the 8 demon regions, the 3 seas took up 3 of them. Brother Fatty, you're so strong. The little fox sprawled in Su Zimo's embrace and popped her head out, clapping her paws with a grin. Shi Jian grumbled, if you had such a treasure, why didn't you take it out earlier? I was about to suffocate to death earlier on. If I held on any longer, I would have fainted. There are already cracks on the water repellent bead and it won't last much longer. I can only take it out at the most critical moment. Little Fatty wiped off the sweat on his forehead and explained. In reality, he was not confident either. If they continued sinking and the water repellent bead cracked before they reached the bottom of the lake, this tomb exploration expedition would have failed. Right then, Su Zimo's expression changed as he warned hurriedly, watch out. The water flow not far away suddenly changed, as though a massive creature was charging towards them. The others were slightly slower and by the time they noticed it, a black shadow had already enveloped them. Boom! The black shadow collided heavily against the light barrier formed by the water repellent bead and everyone shuddered. Instantly, a crack appeared on the water repellent bead. Little Fatty's face was frightfully pale. At this rate, the water repellent bead would be completely destroyed in less than 10 hits. Everyone focused their gazes. Outside the light barrier was a gigantic demon beast. It was silver-white in color and had a frightening gaze. It exuded a chilling aura and had sharp teeth that resembled daggers. It's an ancient frost shark. The golden lion had a terrible expression. Legend has it that this type of frost shark lives in the extreme cold of the deep seas and is extremely ferocious. It's already extinct in Tianhuang mainland. To think that there would be one hidden in this lake. The moment he said that, waves rumbled on the other side. Another huge shadow loomed over them. It was another ancient frost shark. 2 ancient frost sharks could shatter the light barrier formed by the water repellent bead in less than 3 breaths. Be careful, I'm going out. With a cold expression, Su Zimo left them with that statement and charged out of the range of the water repellent bead's light barrier in a flash. At that moment, everyone was at the bottom of the lake at a depth of 10,000 meters. Notwithstanding the bone-chilling aura in the lake, the terrifying pressure alone was enough to kill most living beings. The reason why the ancient frost sharks could roam freely at this depth was partly because they were not weak to begin with. Secondly, it was because they lived here in the first place. After countless years of evolution, they were able to evolve such a body and were already completely adapted to the environment around them. At that moment, Monkey and the others could not leave the protection of the water repellent bead and could only watch everything outside from within the light barrier. The inner core in Su Zimo's chest churned wildly and his blood chi surged with a frightening might. Even the surrounding lake water was affected. A blood-red saber had already appeared in Su Zimo's hands. Blood Quencher shuddered and shone brightly with a blood beam. Within the lake, Su Zimo wielded Blood Quencher and his black hair danced, his eyes were deep and bright. Rumbling demonic chi emanated from his mouth and nose. Against the scouring of the lake water, he was immovable like an inviolable divine being. As though agitated, the two ancient frost sharks turned ferocious and roared furiously. Abandoning the water-repellent bead in front of them, they turned and charged towards Suzumo. Chapter 685. The two ancient frost sharks seemed to have sensed the strength of the invader Suzumo as well and spat out their inner cores without any hesitation. Instantly, the temperature of the entire lake plummeted. The inner core was like a circular ice cube with rich demonic chi and an endless chilling aura. The chilling aura enveloped Suzumo and a layer of frost appeared on his body instantly. In the blink of an eye, layers of ice covered his body, extending from his limbs to his torso and finally to his head. It was impenetrable and the ice crystals thickened continuously. The chilling aura was so heavy, violent and terrifying that it froze the demonic chi around Suzumo within. Everyone within the water-repelling pearl's light barrier turned nervous. Even with the protection of the light barrier, they could feel the bone-chilling coldness. In such an environment, any foreign living being, be it cultivators, demon beasts or even deep-sea demon beasts, would have their combat strength reduced upon arriving at this place of extreme frost. It was already considered decent if they could maintain half of their combat strength. However, the ancient frost sharks lived here the entire time and could unleash their combat strength to its peak. Given the situation, no one was confident that Suzumo could defend against the attacks of the two ancient frost sharks. One of the ancient frost sharks shook its head and tail. Although it was massive, it was unusually agile in the lake and moved at a shocking speed, arriving before Suzumo in the blink of an eye. Crack! 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 Right then, cracking sounds could be heard from Suzumo's body. A series of gigantic cracks appeared on the surface of the human-shaped ice crystal. Boom! Immediately after, there was a deafening sound. Right in front of Monkey and the others, a gigantic figure tore through the ice crystal and soared into the air. His tendons and bones rang together as his blood chi surged. In the blink of an eye, Suzumo's body expanded to a height of 100 feet. His black hair danced and his eyes were frighteningly bright in the murky lake water. He was like an indomitable divine being. The two ancient frost sharks were even stronger than Suzumo had imagined. Channeling the power of his inner core, his blood chi surged and his body was like a gigantic furnace. Under such circumstances, even two ancient frost sharks could freeze him. Right now, he no longer held back and unleashed the power of his blood chi and inner core. Whoosh! Gripping Blood Quencher tightly, Suzumo glared at the ancient frost shark that was charging over and slashed in reverse. Ripples appeared on the surface of the lake. Although they seemed gentle, they contained a terrifying killing intent. This primordial frost shark was very smart. Seeing that it was too late to dodge, it frantically activated the power of its inner core and condensed a transparent ice wall around its body. Crack! The ripples broke the ice wall. Immediately after, another ice wall was erected. The ice wall continued to thicken. Ripples spread out, shattering one ice wall after another. Only when the seventh ice wall was shattered did the power condensed by the saber completely dissipate. Not bad. Suzumo nodded, a hint of surprise flashing through his eyes. The ripple stance was a saber technique created by the Saber Emperor. His saber contained the power of force and most demon beasts would not be able to defend against it. The fact that the ancient frost shark was completely unharmed against the ripple stance was proof of its capabilities. The other ancient frost shark seized the opportunity to charge forward with a murderous aura. Slash! Suzumo stood on the spot motionlessly and attacked once more. Swoosh! Countercurrent burst. In the lake, the saber techniques of the Sea Calming Manual would not feel sluggish at all and could release their greatest might. Countercurrent was the saber technique with the greatest might in the Sea Calming Manual. Against that slash, the ancient frost shark did not dodge at all. Instead, it lunged forward and spat out a chilling inner core to defend itself. Clang! The demonic chi released by the inner core condensed into an ice crystal shield. When Blood Quencher struck the shield, it exploded instantly. It could not defend against the sharpness of Blood Quencher at all. The power of countercurrent. The inner core flew back with a dimmer glow and was devoured by the ancient frost shark once more. Blood Quencher descended. The ancient frost shark's eyes were extremely calm without any hint of panic. It was as though it had expected everything as it opened its mouth and bit down on Blood Quencher. It took it head on. The ancient frost shark chose to take the Khanate spirit weapon head on. Su Zimo's gaze was cold and his saber shone with a bright sanguine light. Crack! 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 That slash severed almost 100 of the ancient frost shark's fangs. The remaining few hundred fangs loosened as well and fresh blood flowed out of its mouth, dyeing the lake red instantly. However, the ancient frost shark's mouth was filled with sharp fangs that intertwined like a sword formation. Because Su Zimo's slash was exhausted, Blood Quencher was stuck in the mouth of those sharp fangs. Watch out! Within the barrier of the water-dispelling pearl, Ching Ching and the others were nervous as they pointed behind Su Zimo and warned loudly. A huge shadow loomed over Su Zimo's head. Behind him, the other ancient frost shark expanded and opened its mouth, devouring the 100-feet-tall Su Zimo in a single gulp. It was only at that moment that Su Zimo understood why the ancient frost shark wanted to take him head-on. The two ancient frost sharks sensed Su Zimo's strength and one of them wanted to create an opportunity for its companion even at the risk of being severely injured. Boss! Brother Su! Little Fatty and Shijian hollered and wanted to charge out of the barrier of the water-dispelling pearl in a moment of recklessness. Don't go first. A tall figure stood in front of the two of them. The sanguine light in his eyes flickered as he glared at the ancient frost shark outside and spoke with a hoarse voice. Monkey said, "Let's wait and see." Among them, Monkey and Linghu had fought alongside Su Zimo in the ancient battlefield and knew his strength the best. Little Fatty and Shijian had not seen Su Zimo for many years and their impression of him was still the same as 20 years ago. Within the lake. After the ancient frost shark swallowed Su Zimo, it floated on the spot motionlessly, as though it was sensing something. A moment later, the ancient frost shark suddenly opened its mouth and let out a hysterical shriek with endless pain in its eyes. Right in front of everyone, the water stream that the ancient frost shark spat out was accompanied by dense flames. Swoosh! The ancient frost shark's body burned with a raging fire that spread through its entire body instantly, burning its massive body until it was bright. Within the ancient frost shark's body, there was a faint figure of a wyrm that resembled a gigantic beast. It spread its wings and roared into the skies, spewing scorching lava from its mouth. Ah! Little Fatty was enlightened and exclaimed, "That's the legendary primordial soaring serpent." That's right, Monkey and the others nodded. The ancient frost shark was of the extreme cold attribute whereas the soaring serpent was of the fire attribute and was of the extreme heat attribute. The cold and heat were like needles that clashed violently within the ancient frost shark's body, producing a destructive power. In just a few breaths, the ancient frost shark's life force was completely extinguished. Su Zimo broke free with the phantom of the primordial soaring serpent behind him. Standing in the flames, he burned with a torrential aura. The originally bone-chillingly cold lake water had already begun to bubble with gurgling sounds. The lake water was boiling. Chapter 686. Little Fatty and Shijian's eyes widened in shock. This was a far cry from the legendary divine powers of burning the heavens and boiling the seas. At best, it could only be considered as boiling the lake. However, the visual impact of this scene was way too intense. The other ancient frost shark's eyes were filled with endless fear as it turned to flee. Go! Su Zimo raised his arm and pointed into the distance. The primordial soaring serpent behind him spread its wings and tore through the waves. Everywhere it passed, the lake water boiled and bubbled with countless bubbles. Almost instantly, the soaring serpent descended above the ancient frost shark and devoured it with its mouth. Roar! The ancient frost shark shrieked and struggled in the soaring serpent's stomach. Flames spewed continuously from within and outside its body, turning it into a pile of ashes that scattered into the lake water. Although the ancient frost shark's bloodline was strong and ferocious, it could only be killed against the primordial soaring serpent. The soaring serpent was a divine being of the flames. In the primordial era, it would even dare to venture into the deep seas, let alone this small lake. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief within the water-dispelling pearl. Without the threat of the ancient frost shark, the water-dispelling pearl could last for a period of time. Right then, a series of strange movements came from the depths of the lake. Everyone who had just calmed down within the water-dispelling pearl tensed up once more as they looked around with widened eyes. It was as though their intrusion had alarmed some sort of life form within the lake. The strange movements were increasingly obvious and came from all directions. However, the strange thing was that no matter how they probed, they could not find any traces of life. All they could see was water surging towards the light barrier of the water-dispelling pearl. Su Zimo's spirit perception was strong and he had naturally sensed the danger long ago. However, even with his vision, he could not see the source of the danger. Psst! Psst! The primordial soaring serpent reared its head and hissed a series of warnings with its cold eyes. Swoosh! The primordial soaring serpent opened its mouth and spat out streams of scorching lava into the lake water. Squeak! Squeak! Suddenly, a strange sound came from the lake water before them, as though some sort of living being was screaming and struggling. Su Zimo took a closer look. In this lake, there were actually countless fish demons that were as thick as an arm and 10 feet long. They were struggling and roaring, and their mouths were filled with fine spikes that flickered with a cold light. The body of this kind of fish demon was almost transparent. It was hard to see it with the naked eye as it swam in the lake. If not for the scarlet magma on the bodies of these fish demons, Su Zimo would not have been able to detect their existence. Bloodthirsty silverfish. Su Zimo was shocked. The bloodthirsty silverfish and the soaring serpent were both living beings of the primordial era. The former was the most savage and bloodthirsty. There was nothing it did not tear and bite. It was a group of ferocious beasts that did not know fear. The most terrifying thing was that the bloodthirsty silverfish lived in groups. At every turn, millions of bloodthirsty silverfish would appear. Everywhere he passed, there was no sign of life. Only corpses were left behind. Even a perfect-grade spirit weapon would be torn to shreds by the bloodthirsty silverfish, let alone a body of flesh and blood. In the depths of the primordial era, even the strongest demons of the deep sea would avoid the bloodthirsty silverfish. Su Zimo had not expected that the primordial soaring serpent would lure out these bloodthirsty things when he summoned it. In the eyes of the bloodthirsty silverfish, it did not matter if it was a soaring serpent or a divine turtle. As long as there were signs of life, they would lunge forward and bite. Squeak! Squeak! Many bloodthirsty silverfish were burned to death by the magma spewed out by the primordial soaring serpent. However, even more bloodthirsty silverfish rushed forward and bit Su Zimo's Jin Dan phenomenon repeatedly in a dense pack. There was also a small group of bloodthirsty silverfish that rushed to the side of Monkey and the others and started attacking the light barrier created by the water avoidance pearl. The light barrier swayed on the verge of collapse. Yet another crack appeared on the water avoidance pearl. Su Zimo channeled his spirit energy and controlled the Jin Dan phenomenon to disperse the bloodthirsty silverfish around the water avoidance pearl. He shouted, "Hurry, head down. The bottom of the lake is right below us. Let's see if we can find the entrance to the tomb." Just now, Su Zimo's body had expanded to 100 feet after the battle with the ancient frost shark and his feet were already touching the bottom of the lake. That was the reason why he knew about this. Everyone's eyes lit up and hope reignited in their hearts. Buzz! Buzz! More bloodthirsty silverfish rushed forward and bit Su Zimo's Jin Dan phenomenon repeatedly. The light of the primordial soaring serpent had already dimmed. The Jin Dan phenomenon was on the verge of collapse. After all, this was a phenomenon created by spirit energy and not the actual body of the soaring serpent. Even the soaring serpent phenomenon could not withstand the frenzied bites of the bloodthirsty silverfish. "I see it." Right then, little Fatty's voice sounded from the bottom of the lake in an unusually excited manner. On the west side of the lake, there was clearly a semicircular tomb entrance that was 20 feet wide and 50 feet tall. Although tens of thousands of years had passed, it still looked extremely majestic. Little Fatty controlled the water avoidance pearl and approached the tomb. There was a gigantic stone door at the entrance of the tomb without any handles. "I'll give it a try and lift the stone door," Linghu volunteered. Ching Ching glared at Linghu and hollered, "Stay at the side. Don't get involved if you don't want to die." With that said, Ching Ching glanced at Little Fatty. Linghu looked over instinctively as well. Little Fatty stood on the spot and stared fixedly at the entrance of the tomb, motionless as though he was possessed. Little Fatty's expression was solemn and he did not look too good. There was a grid diagram etched on the ground at the entrance of the tomb. There were a total of 9 identical squares and it looked rather mysterious. Linghu felt a sense of lingering fear. This was clearly a seal left behind by the master of the great tomb. Just now, if he had barged in rashly, he would have triggered the seal and died on the spot. "Don't worry, I'll hold back these silverfishes. You try to break it as soon as possible." Su Zimo's back was facing everyone as he shielded all the bloodthirsty silverfishes in front of him to buy as much time as possible for Little Fatty. Little Fatty's eyes shone with the light of wisdom. He was calculating furiously in his mind. Although the diagram before him seemed simple with only 9 grids, a massive amount of calculations was required to break the seal left behind by the master of the great tomb. This was the 9-palace diagram that originated from the legendary river diagram. The river diagram was one of the most mysterious treasures of the primordial era. Some had comprehended martial arts from the river pattern, some had comprehended secret arts from the river pattern, and some had even comprehended formations from the river pattern. Legend has it that the river diagram contained the mysteries of the universe and the truths of heaven and earth. No matter what, anyone who saw the river diagram would be able to gain some insights. Time passed by bit by bit. Su Zimo was at the front, defending against the bloodthirsty silverfishes alone. Against the frenzied attacks of the bloodthirsty silverfishes, cracks had already appeared on the primordial soaring serpent phenomenon and it could collapse at any moment. Little Fatty was at the back, frowning in deep thought as he calculated furiously. He was racing against time. Nobody could help them. Finally, "It's done." Little Fatty's eyes lit up. Little Fatty raised his leg and stomped on the 9-palace diagram confidently with every single step. His seemingly clumsy and fat body seemed to have turned lighter on the 9-palace diagram as his footsteps became faster. Front and back, left and right, it looked chaotic and dazzling. "Open!" Little Fatty took the final step and hollered. Rumble! Boom! Boom! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the stone door opened. Chapter 687. There seemed to be some sort of mysterious power within the tomb. Although a hole was opened, it was difficult for the lake water to enter. "Let's go, hurry, and enter!" Little Fatty called out and led everyone in a single file. When he saw that, Su Zimo no longer fought against the bloodthirsty silverfishes and retreated. Like a swimming fish, he left behind a trail in the lake water. In the blink of an eye, he had already charged through the stone door. Everyone's eyes lit up. Shi Jian could not help but praise, Brother Su's combat strength and movement technique don't seem to be affected at all in the lake water. Truly impressive. Su Zimo was puzzled about that as well. Normally speaking, demon beasts on land, including human cultivators, would definitely be affected in combat strength and movement techniques the moment they entered the water. After all, most demon beasts and cultivators lived on land all year round and their body structures and habits were completely different from those of underwater life forms. It was difficult for them to adapt to an unfamiliar environment like the water. Furthermore, the resistance underwater was extremely strong and the deeper one entered, the more obvious the resistance would be. However, for some reason, Su Zimo did not seem to feel the resistance despite being in the lake water and adapted to it almost instantly. It was as though his body was one with the lake water around him. It was as though he was born and bred in the water. Of course, that doubt merely flashed through Su Zimo's mind and he did not think too much about it. After everyone entered the tomb, the bloodthirsty silverfishes swarmed forward. However, they paused in their tracks when they arrived before the 9-palace diagram with wary expressions, not daring to advance. After lingering for a while, the bloodthirsty silverfishes gradually dispersed. Rumble. Bang! Right then, the stone door fell slowly and sealed the tomb once more. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief and looked around. Directly in front of them was a spacious passageway, tall and imposing. On the walls on both sides, there was a fist-sized night pearl embedded every 100 feet. The luminous pearls illuminated the entire tunnel as if it were daytime. Wow, these are all good stuff. Linghu stared at the night pearls above his head and almost drooled. Fatty, you're really something. Shi Jian thumped little Fatty on the shoulder and praised, you've really learned a lot in Tomb Sect over the years. Regardless of the method used to locate the tomb, or the complicated steps just now at the entrance of the tomb, they all left the crowd in awe. If not for little Fatty leading the way, they would not have been able to find this place even after 100 years in the primordial battlefield. Even if they found it, they definitely wouldn't be able to enter. This great opportunity could be considered as a gift from little Fatty to everyone present. Ha! Little Fatty smiled and said nothing. Su Zimo frowned slightly. There was something wrong with little Fatty's situation. Just now that he was at the entrance of the great necropolis and saw the 9 palaces diagram, little Fatty stared in shock for a long time, his expression extremely unsightly. Now that they had successfully entered the great tomb, given little Fatty's temperament, he would be jumping for joy by now. However, at this moment, his mood was somewhat low. What's wrong? Su Zimo asked, did something happen? Little Fatty grit his teeth. We might be too late. The moment Linghu heard that, he panicked and asked hurriedly, what do you mean by we're late? Little Fatty said in a deep voice, I didn't see any suspicious traces along the way and thought that we were the first to arrive. However, the 9 palaces diagram at the entrance of the tomb has already been revealed. It's clear that someone has beaten us to it. Ah! Everyone's eyes were filled with bewilderment. Little Fatty explained, after tens of thousands of years, there should be a thick layer of mud and dust on the ground at the entrance of the great necropolis. However, the 9 palaces diagram is clear and it's clear that someone has been here in advance to wipe away the mud and dust. Even if it's wiped away, he might not be able to enter, the Golden Lion said, the 9 palaces diagram is so complicated. How many people in this world can decipher it? At that point, the Golden Lion suddenly went silent. Everyone exchanged glances and the same thought flashed through their minds. If little Fatty could find this place and decipher the seal of the 9 palaces diagram, it meant that there was a high chance that little Fatty's senior brother would be able to decipher it as well. Instantly, everyone's joy was mostly gone. If little Fatty's senior brother was here first, he would definitely not leave any treasures for them and the utmost treasure of Tomb Sect would naturally be taken away by him as well. Ugh! Sighing, the spirit tiger lowered its head dejectedly and mumbled, how frustrating. I made a wasted trip. Linghu looked at the night illumination pearls above his head. Should we dig out these night illumination pearls? We can't return empty-handed. Qing Qing frowned and kicked Linghu gently to shut him up. If your senior brother was the one who came in first, he does have some tricks up his sleeves. Su Zimo said deeply, when we entered the lake, we did not sense any blood stench nor did we see any signs of fighting. This proves that this person managed to sneak past the detection of the ancient frost sharks, bloodthirsty silverfishes, and many other extinct living beings to successfully enter this tomb. At that point, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. However, he could not recall anything after thinking about it carefully. The little Fatty shook his head and said, I know that senior brother of mine very well. His battle prowess is indeed a notch above mine, but it's not to the extent where he can appear and disappear unpredictably. There should be an expert helping him. Let's go, Suzumo said, since we're already here, we have to go in and take a look no matter what. We can't just turn around and leave. Little Fatty took a deep breath of air and nodded. Let's listen to you, boss. Let's go in. Little Fatty walked at the front in case anything happened. After all, he was the only one who knew what traps, formations and restrictions there were in this tomb. Suzumo was at the back of the group and followed behind. The tunnel was extremely long and Suzumo walked forward. Although it was brightly lit, the surroundings were silent and the only sounds were their footsteps echoing eerily. Suzumo did not let down his guard the entire time and his expression turned increasingly grim. Little Fatty's senior brother was even scarier than he had imagined. Along the way, he did not discover any traces left behind by that person. If Little Fatty had not noticed something amiss at the entrance of the tomb, none of them would have known that someone had already been here. After walking for a while more, they finally arrived at the end of the tunnel and their vision cleared up. A tall and spacious tomb chamber stood before everyone. In the four corners of the tomb chamber, there were 4 bronze coffins that were filled with a lifeless aura. On the wall opposite the tomb chamber, there were 16 tunnels that were dark and deep without the illumination of the night illumination pearls. Everyone had a rough understanding of the methods of the tomb master. The tomb chamber before them was definitely not the main tomb. Of the 16 tunnels, only one was correct. If they took the wrong path, they might never be able to return. Little Fatty stood on the spot and calculated for a long time before pointing to the 7th tunnel from the left and saying, "Let's go this way." With that said, Little Fatty was about to step into the tomb chamber. Suzumo frowned slightly and said with a grim expression, "There's something strange about this tomb chamber. Everyone, be careful." Chapter 688. In that lifeless tomb, Suzumo's spirit perception did not seem to be of much use. However, the moment he caught sight of the tomb chamber, he sensed a hint of danger that vanished right after. Legend has it that ancient mighty figures possessed boundless dermic powers and could even hide from the heavens with their methods, let alone Suzumo's spirit perception. "It's fine, follow me." Little Fatty smiled and walked towards the 7th tunnel. Suzumo and the others followed closely behind. Linghu looked around with shifty eyes. "Bro, Fatty, those 4 coffins look rather old and no one has opened them before. Let's go and pry them open. There might be treasures inside." Linghu chuckled. "Don't go." Suzumo shook his head with a sharp gaze. Linghu quietened down after being glared at by Suzumo and did not dare to have any other thoughts. Right then, a commotion came from the 4 corners of the tomb chamber. Crack! Crack! The sound was extremely ear-piercing, as though the coffin lids were being slid against the coffins. Whoosh! 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 The next moment, an even more sinister sound echoed in the tomb chamber. Everyone turned towards the sound instinctively. The 4 coffins at the sides of the tomb chamber seemed to be pushed by someone as gigantic openings appeared. Dense shadows crawled out from within at an extremely fast speed, encircling everyone like a tidal wave. "Corpse bugs!" Little Fatty exclaimed. The shadows were a swarm of black corpse bugs. Every single corpse bug was pitch black and larger than an adult's palm. They had a thick carapace on their backs and waved 6 scarlet claws that were incomparably sharp. Even though they had no eyes or ears, they could sense everyone's location clearly. Everyone's faces were pale. Little Fox was so scared that she hid in Suzumo's embrace, not daring to raise her head. "Hurry, let's go!" Suzumo hollered. Everyone soared into the air and charged towards the 7th tunnel. This group of corpses actually leaped into the air like a black torrent, surging from all directions, sealing off all exits. Suzumo was about to make a move when Ching Ching reverted to her true form and howled into the skies. She channeled her bloodline and the temperature around her soared. Ching Ching opened her mouth and spat out a jade-green flame. She turned her head and burned in all directions. The dark green flames condensed into an impenetrable light shield. Although corpse worms were ferocious, all living things had their weaknesses. They also had things that they were afraid of. That was the flame of a divine beast. The fire that Ching Ching used her bloodline to activate was no ordinary fire. That was the flame controlled by the divine bird, by Fong. It was not inferior to the flames of the soaring serpent. The black torrent formed by corpse bugs surged forward and crashed into the emerald light barrier. Countless corpse bugs screamed, fell, and struggled in the flames before finally turning into ashes. Everyone was shocked. With the Bai Fong's flame, they would definitely be able to break through the obstruction of the corpse worms and enter the tunnel on the other side. Boom! 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 Right then, 4 deafening bangs sounded from the 4 corners of the tomb. A shuddering aura descended instantly and filled every single corner of the tomb. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Against that aura, the initially blazing Bai Fong's flame even showed signs of extinguishing. So strong! Su Zimo gasped and did not have time to think. He channeled his Jin Dan to its limits and released the Jin Dan phenomenon instantly. Rumble! Boom! The firmament split open and lightning flashed. Countless stars and meteors fell and a torrent surged. A gigantic demon beast descended and suppressed the raging torrent with its 4 legs. Its shell supported the shattered firmaments and protected everyone beneath it. It reared its head and roared into the skies with a clear gaze that could not be stared at. The primordial divine turtle had arrived. At the same time, 4 powerful auras had already broken through the corpse bugs and Bai Fong's flame, arriving before everyone. They were 4 skeletons. To be precise, they were 4 skeletons from tens of thousands of years ago. The fact that their bones did not decay after 10,000 years meant that the owners of the 4 skeletons must have been mighty figures of the conjoint body realm in the past. Only the bones of conjoint body mighty figures that had been cultivated for 10,000 years and were permeated by dermic powers would not decay. Snap! Against the primordial divine turtle, the 4 skeletons were expressionless and their glabella shone with a strange light. They attacked at the same time and shattered the divine turtle instantly. The Jin Dan phenomenon dissipated the moment it was formed. Although they were only 4 skeletons that had lost their dermic powers, the power contained within the bones could shatter the Jin Dan phenomenon with ease. Not to mention 4 skeletons, even if there was only 1 skeleton, it would be enough to kill everyone here. Su Zimo's Jin Dan was connected to the primordial divine turtle after it shattered and was shaken. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his mind raced as he thought of a countermeasure. The scarlet light in Monkey's eyes surged wildly and he could go berserk at any moment. Little Fatty seemed to be frozen in shock and no one knew what he was thinking. The others were pale and despair filled their eyes. Against the skeletons of mighty figures, everyone's strength was as insignificant as ants. Ouch! All of a sudden. As though he thought of something, Little Fatty exclaimed and bit the tip of his tongue gently, spitting out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, he chanted a series of strange and complicated incantations. With the augmentation of the incantations, the mouthful of blood floated in midair without dissipating. As for the 4 skeletons, they stopped attacking as well. However, the glabella of the 4 skeletons continued to flicker. The incantations became more hurried and concentrated. A thin layer of sweat appeared on Little Fatty's forehead as well. Gradually, the mouthful of blood split into 4 droplets that arrived at the heads of the 4 skeletons and dripped down slowly. The glowing glabella of the 4 skeletons extinguished slowly. The 4 mighty figure skeletons turned around slowly and returned to the coffin in the corner of the tomb chamber. They crawled in and closed the lid casually. The black tide formed by the corpse bugs around them retreated gradually as well and returned to the coffin, vanishing before long. There was a loud rumble. The coffin closed once more. Peace returned to the tomb chamber once more. If not for the fact that the corpse bugs were still emitting black smoke on the ground, just now, it would have seemed like an illusion. What is that? Shi Jian was drenched in cold sweat as he asked while panting. Those 4 coffins are a backup plan left behind by the tomb master. If outsiders barge in, they'll alarm these existences and kill them. Little Fatty explained with a lingering fear as well. Taking a deep breath, he continued, just now, that incantation is from Tomb Sect's supreme classic, the Dragon Quake Sutra. Every legacy disciple has to memorize it. No one knows what it's used for and no one has used it before either. However, Master once mentioned that this incantation can prove one's identity as a disciple of Tomb Sect at critical moments. Normally speaking, the tombs of other cultivators would not have such a terrifying killing move as a backup plan. Naturally, that incantation was not of much use and was of little value most of the time. However, the owner of the tomb before them had set up layers of restrictions so that those of Tomb Sect could obtain his inheritance. That was where the incantation came in handy. This time round, Shi Jian understood and said with lingering fear, no matter what, I'm not going to return to the tomb of Tomb Sect anymore. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly said, we'll talk about this later. Little Fatty, hurry and find the main tomb. Just now, there's movement in the depths of the tomb. There's someone else inside. You mean? Little Fatty's eyes lit up. There was a high chance that his senior brother had arrived before him and had yet to leave. Chapter 689. Under Little Fatty's lead, everyone charged towards the 7th tunnel. After making many turns along the way, a light appeared before them. It was clear that this was the end of the tunnel. Everyone was invigorated and hastened their footsteps. After charging out of the tunnel, their vision opened up. It was yet another empty tomb chamber. This time round, there were 8 dark tunnels on the opposite side of the tomb chamber. It was clear that everyone had to make another choice. Everyone turned and looked at Little Fatty. Little Fatty took out his geomantic compass and adjusted it slightly. Using a secret skill of Tomb Sect, he activated the geomantic compass and the magnetic needle gradually stabilized, pointing towards one of the tunnels. Little Fatty blurted out, over here. Before he could finish his sentence, Little Fatty had already charged over. After passing through that tunnel, there was another tomb chamber at the end. There were 4 tunnels on the opposite side. Shi Jian panted heavily from running and was speechless. You guys from Tomb Sect are really mentally unstable. Aren't you guys being way too cautious? Little Fatty took out his geomantic compass once more and was quickly guided towards the leftmost tunnel. Everyone followed closely behind. Linghu shook his head and said confidently, if I'm not wrong, there should be another tomb chamber at the end of this tunnel with 2 tunnels on the opposite side. Little Fatty nodded. You're right. There are a total of 32 suspicious cave abodes outside. Just now, there are 16 tunnels in the tomb chamber. After that, there will be 8. Just now, there are 4. At the end of this tunnel, there should be 2 tunnels. Aren't I amazing? Linghu closed in front of Qing Qing and said smugly. Qing Qing pouted her lips. Sure enough, when everyone walked out of the passage, they saw another tomb chamber. There were only 2 paths on the other side. The left tunnel had a huge life word written above it. The right tunnel had a huge death word written above it. The 2 paths of life and death were right before everyone and they had to make another choice. Everyone turned to look at the geomantic compass in Little Fatty's hands. At this time, the magnetic needle of the compass was in complete chaos. It spun around without any pattern, unable to settle down. How could this be? Su Zimo frowned slightly. Little Fatty's expression turned solemn. The feng shui here is chaotic and the compass is useless. This is the final test left behind by the great Tomb Lord. One of these 2 paths must lead to the real main tomb. How should I choose? Su Zimo asked. I don't know. Little Fatty shook his head and fell into deep thought. Hey, aren't you strong? Pick one of these 2 paths. Qing Qing stretched out her finger and poked Linghu's ribs as she whispered. Ling Hu coughed lightly and muttered, "Life and death are two paths. The path of life may not lead to life, and the path of death may not lead to death." These two words were left behind by the tomb owner to confuse the later generations. In my opinion, the path with the word death written on it is the true path of life. Take the meaning of seeking life amidst death. Monkey thumped Ling Hu on the shoulder. Perverted tiger, you're pretty good. Of course. Ling Hu raised his head. Little Fatty was deep in thought. Given the tomb owner's suspicious and cautious personality, Ling Hu's guess might be true when he thought about the series of traps he left behind. The little fox leaped out of Su Zimo's embrace and transformed into a young girl once more. She walked to the path with the word life on the left and sensed it silently. A moment later, the little fox arrived at the path with the word death on the right. The moment she arrived, her expression changed and she retreated a few steps back instinctively. "What's wrong?" everyone asked and swarmed over. When they arrived at the path with the word death, everyone's expressions changed slightly as well. Everyone caught a whiff of the thick stench of blood in the tunnel. In fact, they could even hear the howls of ghostly foxes and wolves in the depths of the tunnel, as though there were countless living beings struggling and howling. It was chilling. It was as though the tunnel led straight to hell. As for the other path with the word life, it was filled with life like a spring breeze, as though it was an immortal realm. It was no wonder why they were the paths of life and death. Ching Ching analyzed, "There's a high chance that the end of this path of death leads to the true tomb, where the main tomb is located." "That's right, we think the same," Ling Hu chuckled and tried to get closer. The golden lion nodded. "We can only do the opposite. There's a high chance that this path with a torrential stench of blood is the true path of life." "That's not right." Right then, Su Zimo shook his head and denied everyone's guess. "The auras of these two paths are so obvious that it's easy to deduce. Why would the tomb owner go through the extra step of writing the words life and death on the two paths?" Everyone was stunned. Su Zimo was right. In that case, there was no need for the tomb owner to leave those two words. Little Fatty asked, "Boss, what do you think?" Su Zimo said deeply, "There's a high chance that those two words are an instruction left behind by the tomb owner for his descendants. The path with the word life is the true path of life. As for the other path, it's a path of death with no return." Almost everyone thought of the problem in a complicated manner. However, they did not expect that the path of life was the true path of life and the path of death was the true path of death. Little Fatty slapped his thigh. "I trust you, boss. Let's take the path of life." "How about that?" Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "Little Fatty and I will enter this path first. You guys wait outside. If the two of us don't come out after an hour, there's no need." Monkey waved it off. An additional person means an additional helper. Even if the end is truly hell, we'll be able to charge out together. "That's right. Let's go together." Ling Hu and the others stood out and shouted as well. "All right, let's go together then." Nodding, Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher from his storage bag and led the way with Little Fatty. What they had to face was not only the possible dangers of the tomb, but also the person who had already arrived at the tomb before them. In less than 15 minutes, a bright light shone from the front of the tunnel. Everyone was invigorated. They knew that they had chosen the right path. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone sped up and sprinted forward with all their might. The moment they arrived at the entrance of the tunnel, Su Zimo felt a sense of danger and exclaimed, "Watch out!" A black shadow as thick as a finger coiled over like a spirit snake. Blood Quencher quivered and shone brightly with a blood beam. With a backhand slash, Su Zimo slashed at the gray shadow. Su Zimo's expression changed. When the saber landed on the black shadow, it actually didn't cut it in half. Instead, the black shadow coiled around Blood Quencher a few times and coiled towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo was decisive and abandoned Blood Quencher. Crouching down, he was almost stuck to the ground and darted out like an anaconda. Before he could even make out the appearance of the person who attacked, Su Zimo threw a punch in reverse, conjuring a gigantic seal that smashed down viciously. It was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The person wore gray robes and was unhurried. Wielding an iron ruler, he tapped Su Zimo's wrist gently at an extremely fast speed. Eh! A look of surprise flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. The move of the gray-robed cultivator seemed familiar. Chapter 690. If the gigantic seal conjured by Su Zimo's palm continued to smash down, the gray-robed cultivator's wrist would be crushed by the iron ruler before it could even injure him. Su Zimo harumphed coldly and his eyes shone brightly. Instantly, he changed his stance and opened his palm, grabbing the gray-robed cultivator's iron ruler. The gray-robed man knew how powerful it was as well. If the iron ruler landed in Su Zimo's hands, the latter would definitely snatch it away. Swash! The gray-robed man retracted his hand right away and retreated. Su Zimo had already expected that. After grabbing empty air, he strode forward and punched in reverse. The gray-robed cultivator conjured his spirit perception with his other hand and a gigantic chessboard appeared in his palm, blocking in front of him. The spirit art was extremely domineering and the moment the chessboard appeared, it absorbed almost all the spirit chi in the surroundings. Boom! Su Zimo's fist slammed heavily on the chessboard and let out a deafening bang. Snap! The chessboard shattered. The gray-robed man staggered a few steps back but he was not injured. There were extremely few cultivators who could withstand a full-powered attack from Su Zimo head-on. The gray-robed cultivator shook his numb arm and raised his head to look at Su Zimo. Suddenly, his expression changed as he exclaimed, "It's you." Su Zimo did not move and did not chase after him. He glared at the gray-robed cultivator with a burning gaze. The gray-robed cultivator was slightly plump and had ordinary looks. He wielded a ruler and did not have any sect badge or keepsake on him. Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and narrowed his eyes, asking instead, "You know me?" Humph. The gray-robed man avoided Su Zimo's gaze and merely harumphed. Footsteps sounded. Monkey and the others had already rushed forward and surrounded the gray-robed cultivator. All of them had unfriendly expressions and ferocious gazes. Little Fatty rushed over with an aggressive aura. When he saw the gray-robed man, Little Fatty froze for a moment and could not help but ask with a suspicious expression, "Who are you?" "Ha!" Ling Hu was even more confused. He asked, "Isn't this your senior brother, the one called Ling Ming?" "No." Little Fatty shook his head. The Golden Lion asked, "If it's not your senior brother, how did he get in?" This person was able to avoid the ancient frost sharks and bloodthirsty silverfish, decipher the 9 palace diagram, and choose all the correct passages to reach this place. Little Fatty's heart was also extremely confused. Monkey waved his hand and said casually, "Who cares who he is? Just kill him. There's no need for so many questions." The gray-robed cultivator jumped in fright. "Don't do it yet." Little Fatty blocked Monkey and sized up the gray-robed cultivator from head to toe. Widening his beady eyes, he asked in an unfriendly tone, "You know how to decipher that 9 palace diagram? I could crack something so simple when I was 8 years old." The gray-robed cultivator pursed his lips in disdain. "Oh my!" Ling Hu sneered and cursed, "You're about to die, how can you be more arrogant than Tiger Lord?" Although Little Fatty was indignant, he did not know how to refute. After all, this person had entered before him. Little Fatty grit his teeth and asked hatefully, "How did you find this place? Astral Dragon Sputum Lair?" "You can't fool me with such petty tricks," the gray-robed cultivator replied nonchalantly. Little Fatty suppressed the anger in his heart and panted heavily, asking again, "Only people of Tomb's sect can pass through the first chamber. How did you get there?" "Of course, I walked." The gray-robed cultivator's eyes were filled with mockery as he chuckled. You can't be so stupid as to alarm the 4 coffins in the corner, right? F***CKU, little fatty was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He asked a bunch of questions but in reality, he did not manage to get anything out of him. He still did not know anything about the background of the grey-robed cultivator. He did not know how this person entered as well. Su Zimo patted little fatty on the shoulder and gestured for the latter to back off. Immediately, he looked at the grey-robed cultivator not far away and asked with a fake smile, "You know me?" The grey-robed cultivator rolled his eyes and smacked his lips. The famous monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island who destroyed Glass Palace in the ancient battlefield, and Su Zimo who has 2 phenomenons. Who wouldn't know of you? Oh, Su Zimo retracted his smile and said indifferently with a cold expression, "All the more reason why I can't let you go now that you know so much." Hey! The grey-robed cultivator was flustered when he heard that. What are you talking about? We don't have a deep feud and I merely entered this place by accident. I didn't touch a single thing in this tomb, why must you be so ruthless? The main tomb was extremely huge and resembled a gigantic palace. There were many things placed neatly in the palace and they were covered in dust, it did not seem like they had been touched. Little fatty hesitated. He truly could not bring himself to kill this person just because he had barged into the tomb. Su Zimo was expressionless and his eyes were filled with killing intent as he said coldly, "There's nothing I can do about it." Who asked you to know so much? I can only kill you. F***CK, the grey-robed cultivator nearly cursed out loud. When he saw how exasperated the grey-robed cultivator was, Su Zimo was in a great mood and greeted with a smile, "Lin Xuanji, how have you been?" Ha! Monkey and the others were already prepared to attack when they heard that and were stunned. A look of panic flashed through the grey-robed cultivator's eyes as he looked around with a lost expression and asked pretentiously, "Who are you talking to, fellow Taoist?" Su Zimo sneered, "Lin Xuanji, stop pretending." The grey-robed cultivator's face turned green and white. A moment later, he reached out and swiped his face, removing a mask that was as thin as a cicada's wing. That person had a fair face without a beard and looked dignified. It was Lin Xuanji whom Su Zimo met in the Dragon Bone Valley. Lin Xuanji glared at Su Zimo and said fiercely, "Bloody hell, you can still recognize me even in this state?" Su Zimo smiled gently. "I'll recognize you even if you turn into ashes." In reality, a thought had already crossed Su Zimo's mind the moment he entered the tomb. However, he did not continue pondering about it. Lin Xuanji possessed the capabilities to be able to evade the senses of the ancient frost sharks and bloodthirsty silverfishes and enter the tomb without anyone noticing. Back then, countless cultivators died in the barren forest outside the Dragon Bone Valley. However, Lin Xuanji was safe and sound. It was as though the ferocious beasts could not see him. That person's methods and background were extremely mysterious and Su Zimo initially knew nothing about him. Later on, when he learned about the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, Su Zimo realized that there was a high chance that this person came from the most mysterious faction in Tianhuang mainland, Enigma Palace. Just now that Su Zimo was certain of his identity after exchanging blows with Lin Xuanji. Back in the Dragon Bone Valley, the two of them had a brief exchange where Lin Xuanji dispelled his sanguine ape seal with ease with his folding fan. That method of dispelling was exactly the same as what happened just now. A mocking look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he mocked, "You're really something, aren't you? To think that the successor of Enigma Palace would come and rob someone else's tomb. TSK, if not for you, who would have recognized me?" Lin Xuanji was indignant. He was fully prepared for this trip. Not only did he wear a mask that allowed him to change his appearance, but he also intentionally hid his folding fan and changed the iron ruler in his hand. He had not expected to be recognized by Su Zimo immediately. Chapter 691. From the tone of the two of them, it seemed as though they had known each other for a long time and were on good terms. As such, everyone's expressions gradually relaxed. The atmosphere became much more relaxed as well. So, you're a fellow Taoist from Enigma Palace. No wonder you have such capabilities. As someone from Tomb's sect, one of the 5 heretical doctrines, Little Fatty had naturally heard of Enigma Palace. This was a major sect founded by the ancient expert, Fairy Ling Long. Up till now, Enigma Palace was the one who hosted the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking every single time. Enigma Palace did not have many disciples, and every generation, a legacy disciple would enter the world. The legacy disciples of Enigma Palace were the most mysterious, and almost no one knew how strong they were. However, apart from the successor of Tomb's sect, the successor of Enigma Palace was probably the only one who could find this place among the successors of super sects. Su Zimo had long understood Lin Xuanji's capabilities. Back then, this was the person who snuck into the Dragon Bone Valley stealthily and brought him out alive. Lin Xuanji put away the metal corpse in his hands and withdrew the folding fan from his robes once more, saying embarrassedly, "You guys sure came quickly. I didn't even have time to take anything." Su Zimo smiled. "This is the tomb of Tomb's sect, don't think about it." Little Fatty waved it off. "It's fine. Since you're boss's friend, you can take anything you want from here as well, apart from the utmost treasure of Tomb's sect." Lin Xuanji's eyes lit up when he heard that. Su Zimo had a bad feeling. Lin Xuanji chuckled. "Fellow Taoist, you sure are straightforward. However, I'm not a greedy person. I won't take a single treasure from this tomb." "Humph." Su Zimo sneered, "Stop pretending. Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are?" Back then, Lin Xuanji coveted the Night Spirit's extraordinary bloodline for a long time. With so many treasures before him, how could he return empty-handed? Lin Xuanji's mouth twitched as he ignored Su Zimo. "I'm not here for the treasures of this tomb to begin with. I'm here for the dragon vein." "You want to seize the dragon vein?" Su Zimo frowned slightly. "Not bad." Lin Xuanji nodded and looked at Little Fatty. "The dragon vein here is formed postnatally. Although the tomb master prepared it for you, given your strength, you'll only be able to absorb 50% of it even if you obtain the utmost treasure of Tomb's sect. If you have too much luck, you won't be able to handle it. Going too far is as bad as not going far enough. Instead, you'll bring about an imminent disaster." Little Fatty remained silent. He knew that Lin Xuanji was not exaggerating. The dragon vein was luck. The mighty figure of Tomb's sect set up the astral dragon sputum layer to connect with heaven and earth, gathering the fortune of the ancient battlefield and forming the dragon vein. It took tens of thousands of years before it was truly formed in this generation. The concept of luck was illusory. Although Fairy Ling Long was not an emperor, she had a transcendent status in the ancient era. It was not only because she was the wife of the human emperor. More than that, she was an unprecedented person of great luck who could deduce everything and predict fortune. In fact, she could even peek into the secrets of the heavens. It was precisely because of her capabilities that the human race was able to gain the upper hand in the ancient war and avoid the calamity of extinction multiple times. The primordial 9 races hated her to the core. Rumor has it that in the ancient war, the primordial 9 races sent experts to assassinate and ambush Fairy Ling Long multiple times in order to gain the upper hand, but to no avail. Luck was formless, but it existed. With great luck, one could turn misfortune into blessings and encounter even more opportunities. Obtaining luck would not increase a cultivator's combat strength, nor would there be any immediate changes. However, it had a crucial impact on a cultivator's future. Experts who cultivated to the level of mighty figures and patriarchs were all blessed with luck. If they were possessed by the god of misfortune, they would have died for various reasons at chi condensation and foundation establishment. It would be considered a good death if they could even exhaust their lifespan. Notwithstanding the experts who were far away, among the true paragons of the major sects who entered the ancient battlefield this time round, which of the 100-odd people on the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking hadn't encountered an immortal opportunity before? Which of them hadn't entered the cave abodes of their ancestors or ancient ruins? Which of them hadn't obtained the legacies of some experts? Lin Xuanji said, you've absorbed 50% of the dragon vein and the remaining will dissipate into the world. Instead of dissipating, why don't you fulfill my wish? Linghu's eyes darted around as he asked, according to what you said, the 7 of us can absorb the dragon vein as well. You can't be the only one who gets all the benefits. Yes, the golden lion nodded as well. This time round, Qing Qing did not refute Linghu for once. Lin Xuanji gave a fake smile. Sure, if you guys can obtain the dragon vein, go ahead. Don't worry about me. You're the one who said it. Don't regret it when the time comes. Linghu asked. Lin Xuanji vowed solemnly, I won't regret it. All right. Linghu said, tell us first, how do we absorb the dragon vein? Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. Su Zimo burst into laughter. Don't ask any more. Obtaining the dragon vein is definitely a secret skill of Enigma Palace. There's no way they'll impart it to outsiders. Linghu scratched his head. Doesn't that mean we can only watch from the sidelines? Since Fatty has said that there are so many treasures in this palace, you can pick one, Su Zimo chuckled. All right. Linghu grinned. He had his eyes on the dazzling treasures in the palace a long time ago and was waiting for Su Zimo to say that. There were 2 stone shelves on both sides of the palace that spanned a few thousand feet all the way to the depths of the palace. On the stone shelf on the left, there were weapons, rare ores, and treasures of heaven and earth. Everything one could think of was there. The stone shelves on the right were filled with cultivation techniques and secret manuals that were all-encompassing. With a casual glance, Su Zimo even caught sight of many cultivation techniques and secret skills of the immortal, fiend, and Buddhist super sects. Amazing! Su Zimo was secretly speechless. Those items were treasures that the mighty figures of Toon's sect had collected throughout their entire lives. Monkey and the others were not interested in the cultivation techniques of the human race. After condensing their essence spirits, they would naturally obtain the inheritance memories from the depths of their bloodlines and demonic techniques that were most suitable for them. They walked towards the stone shelves on the left. It was not easy for the Yao race to obtain a suitable weapon. This was a rare opportunity. At the same time, he was still thinking about finding a treasure for the little fox. Back then, if little fox had not risked her life to save him, her fire-blocking basket would not have been snatched away by Xuan Yudaoren. That was the only thing little fox's mother had left for her. Monkey and the others walked along the stone shelves and looked down. During this period of time, they even caught sight of many supreme-grade dermic weapons. There were even perfect dermic weapons with 5 dermic patterns. However, they did not take any of them. If they could only take one, they had to be careful. Suddenly, Monkey paused in his tracks and his gaze landed on a rusty rod. Monkey picked up the rod and observed it. There was nothing special about the rod. In fact, there were no dermic patterns on it and the rod was filled with rust. However, when it was spun, it would reflect a faint golden light. It was not a dermic weapon. However, when Monkey picked up the iron rod, Su Zimo noticed that the corner of Lin Xuanji's eyes twitched. Chapter 692. Although Su Zimo did not know the background of the metal rod, he believed that Lin Xuanji would not be wrong about it. He was about to ask Monkey to accept the metal rod. However, Monkey had already turned around and said to little Fatty, "Fatty, I want this rod." "Sure, no problem." Little Fatty was in a great mood and agreed without hesitation. Heis. Su Zimo's ears twitched and he could vaguely hear a soft sigh from Lin Xuanji beside him. Su Zimo snickered internally and walked over, asking softly, "Brother Lin, what's the background of this metal rod?" "How would I know?" Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes and was unwilling to say anything more. "Then why are you sighing?" "TSK, you can even hear that?" Lin Xuanji's eyes widened and he pondered for a moment before smacking his lips. "I can't tell exactly what it is either. However, it's definitely something good and isn't weaker than a connate dermic weapon." "Psst." Su Zimo sucked in a breath of cold air. That was a rather high evaluation. Lin Xuanji explained, there are way too many legendary items and treasures in this world. How can any weapon created after birth compare to them? Su Zimo understood. For example, the divine phoenix bone in his right hand was stronger than any connate dermic weapon even though it did not have any dermic patterns. Monkey casually found a rag and carried the metal rod on his back. Linghu walked down the stone shelf and was dazzled. There were way too many treasures on it and it was a dazzling sight. Linghu picked up a long saber that shone with a chilling aura. Even after tens of thousands of years, the saber's sharpness was still extremely sharp and exuded a chilling intent. The blade was almost transparent and there were patterns carved on it. It was a work of the gods. It was a perfect dermic weapon. Linghu could not bear to let it go and played with it for a long time before putting it back reluctantly. Before long, Linghu picked up another spear and had a great time with it. It was truly ferocious. A moment later, Linghu put the spear back. Alas! Linghu sighed. It would be great if he could take all these treasures away. As he walked, Linghu seemed to sense something. His gaze shifted to a corner of the stone shelf. There were 4 hooks there. Linghu stepped forward and picked up the 4 hooks. He wiped away the dust on them and revealed the original appearance of the hooks. They were as white as jade and almost transparent. There were no patterns on it. It didn't look like it was made of metal. For some reason, the moment Linghu picked up the hook, the blood in his body became restless, and a strange feeling arose in his heart. It was as if these 4 hooks had something to do with him. Linghu's heart skipped a beat as he conjured a tiger claw. Channeling his inner core, he extended his sharp claws. Ah, it really does look like it. Linghu grinned. He discovered that his tiger claws were actually somewhat similar to these 4 hooks. Linghu reached out his tiger claw and touched the hook in his hand. Paw! That single touch did not matter. Linghu's claws were sliced cleanly by the hook in his hand. How sharp! When he saw that, Su Zimo's pupils constricted slightly. After cultivating the Void Thunder Manual, Linghu's bloodline was extraordinary. The sharpness and toughness of his claws was such that even Blood Quencher could not sever them. F***CK, what the F***CK is this? How dare you break my claws? Linghu was stunned for a moment before cursing. Flustered and exasperated, he was prepared to throw the 4 jade-like hooks back. All of a sudden, in a moment of carelessness, Linghu's fingertip was touched gently by the hook. Instantly, fresh blood flowed and dyed the hook red. The next moment, something even scarier happened. The hook dug into Linghu's fingertip bit by bit without his control. The 10 fingers were connected to the heart. Ah! Linghu reared his head and howled in pain. Instinctively, he channeled his strength into his palm and clenched it. That single clench was fine, but the remaining 3 hooks pierced his palm as well. Upon contact with Linghu's blood, the remaining 3 hooks fused into Linghu's palm as well. The entire process happened extremely quickly. By the time Su Zimo reacted, the 4 hooks had already vanished, leaving behind a convulsing Linghu who was rolling on the ground in pain. Ah! 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 A series of deep roars came from the depths of Linghu's throat. Crackle! Crackle! Within Linghu's body, his tendons and bones rang together as his bloodline surged. In the blink of an eye, he reverted to his true form and exuded an extremely terrifying aura with a torrential malevolent aura. Linghu's skin was already cracking and his flesh was exploding. The next moment, he recovered. Su Zimo and Lin Xuanji's expressions changed slightly as they exclaimed at the same time, "He's reborn." Linghu was experiencing a huge opportunity. The originator of this fortuitous encounter was the 4 hooks. Lin Xuanji said deeply, "If I'm not wrong, there's a high chance that the 4 hooks are the claws of a divine being of the tiger race. Linghu won't be able to use them for now. Once he cultivates an essence spirit, they'll come in handy." An hour later, Linghu's tragic cries gradually subsided. A while later, Linghu reverted to his human form and leaped up from the ground. Without using much strength, he leaped 100 feet high. It was clear that he had been reborn and his strength had increased tremendously. He was at the peak of inner core. With another step, he would be able to cultivate an essence spirit and become a fiend demon. On the other side, the golden lion hesitated for a long time before choosing a perfect saber. It was a dermic weapon. Qing chose a perfect dermic weapon as well. It was a feather fan. Qing looked at the feather fan with a clear hint of sorrow in her eyes. The feather fan was jade green in color. Although it was not imbued with dermic powers, it emitted a scorching aura. Su Zimo's mind raced and he understood right away. That feather fan must have been made from the feathers of a bifong. Qing was filled with sorrow when she thought of her father who might have died in the Thousand Spiders sand dune. On the other side, Little Fox hesitated for a long time before choosing a pitch-black umbrella. Why did you choose this umbrella? Su Zimo asked. Weapons like this don't have strong offensive capabilities. Most of the time, they can only be used for defense. It's fine, Little Fox chuckled. With this umbrella, I can help you block some damage at critical moments while I'm by your side, sir. Su Zimo went silent. A moment later, he raised his head and looked at Little Fox seriously. Little Fox, don't worry. I'll definitely get that fire-blocking basket back for you personally. Yes. Little Fox nodded solemnly. I trust you, sir. Monkey and the other four had already chosen the treasures they wanted. However, Su Zimo had no clue. At the end of the palace, there was a skeleton in clothes. That should be the master of the great tomb. Although tens of thousands of years had passed and the flesh of conjoint body mighty figures had already withered, their bones were still indestructible. It was rumored that after a Mahayana realm patriarch died, their flesh and blood would not decay even after 100,000 years. Their bodies were truly indestructible and indestructible. The truly eye-catching thing was not the skeleton of the conjoint body mighty figure. Instead, it was the gigantic electric pool behind him that surged with purple lightning and emitted a terrifying aura. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.